to do this is not something I could support. I understand it, and there's reasons in our regs why in a residential zone you can have a nursing home but not an office building, and in a commercial zone you can't have an office building, but it would take a planning discussion to go into that. Right now, I can't see rezoning this design commercial. And the one other thing I'll say before I close, even though I don't think we'll get to it on traffic, this was just an idea I had, Mr. Kennelly, and I wanted to say it in a public forum. Because Mr. Galante does an excellent job with the traffic reports, and there's lots of data there. When we look at traffic reports like this, and we look at the plan of conservation development, it says these projects should be to alleviate congestion, not exacerbate it. And we get letter-to-letter grades on these things, which I usually dismiss. It's a C, it's still a C, it's a D, it's still a D, or it goes from a C to a D. And we also get a delay. And sometimes you could have a letter change, like there's one in here, it only goes down like 1.3 seconds, but it's a letter change, it goes from 19.9 to 21.2. I would actually say that anything that is an F, we should really consider, casting a careful look at allowing anything that's an F to get worse. Meaning they have some Fs in there that are going up by 14 seconds. If it's already an F, it can't decrease level of service. I've made this point before. Whether it goes up 2 seconds, 20 seconds, or whether you can't get out for 3 hours, it's still an F. So I think we have to look at anything that's an F level of service, which is, by Mr. Galante's account, the worst letter grade he could give it. If anything goes up, I think in the future, to alleviate, not exacerbate, if we see any Fs on a traffic report, those should be alleviated, not made worse by any traffic. So that's just something I thought when I looked at this, Mr. Kennelly, because it's in his report, although we don't always agree with his conclusions. That's data that he provides to us. So.
Well, I would say, Mr. Vice Chairman, that consistently your background, understanding how numbers work and their impact, you do that every day. You do a great job. And I agree that Mr. Galante also does a great job. Your analysis generally of his work, and it is excellent work. But I think you make a great point, which is the frog isn't, boils 1 degree at a time. And that's really what we have in these situations. It's the continuous building that is a problem. So I agree with you completely.
Commissioner Suter. You got to beat the frog analogy.
I know.
It's going to be hard.
I support the comments of my fellow commissioners, and I'd just like to add a few more thoughts. In studying the 500-foot map, it's very clear that this zone is deep within a residential zone, and driving down Weeping Willow Lane, that reinforced that fact. And if you looked at the zoning map provided by Attorney Green, it's clear that this proposed zone is more than a mile from any other commercial zone in town. It would be an anomaly if it were to be created. And it really, times haven't changed enough to justify the creation of such a zone. What would be built in it is an office building. The proposed use is medical, but it could be for anything. And once a commercial zone is created, it's created for decades to come. So who knows what the future might bring to that location. There's also an existing traffic congestion in the area. The residents in the area testified at length about that, including some who had lived in the area for 35 or 40 years. It's a severe problem. It's a very small roundabout. This proposed site would be right off the roundabout. And despite Mr. Galante's report finding no serious traffic impact, I still think that it would increase traffic congestion and would be a real problem. The proposed site is on the Merritt Parkway. The Merritt Parkway is just what it says. It's a parkway. It's a beautifully landscaped corridor running through this part of Connecticut, through a heavily residential area for the most part. There are isolated commercial developments, one of which is at exit 44, where the Hi-Ho Hotel is, which goes back many years. And we just recently had an application last year from someone else who wanted to build a 35,000 square foot medical building across the Hi-Ho Hotel, alleging that it was primarily for use by patients in Fairfield, but it was clear to all of us that it was for patients up and down the Merritt Parkway as well, and it would have drawn more cars and more traffic, and of course there were a number of other problems with it. There seems to be a trend to try and commercialize the Merritt Parkway, which should be resisted. And in fact, our town plan says that because of, for instance, the exit at Park Avenue in the Stratfield area, the existence of the exit tends to increase the traffic congestion. And therefore, the town plan says in section 11.3.2, or actually I think it's Roman 2, 3.3.2, that uses of a commercial and industrial nature in the area should be discouraged. And I think that's the principle that we should follow in considering whether or not to grant the zone. I think we should oppose the creation of a commercial zone in this area. And it would set a bad precedent, I think, that might encourage future applications of a commercial nature around Merritt Parkway exit. So I'm going to vote to deny this application.
Thank you, Commissioner Suter. Any further discussion by any member of the Commission? Commissioner Alessi.
I'm going to be voting with my fellow commissioners against this. Yeah, it's on. Let me turn it on. With my fellow commissioners against this, I'm not a fan of spot zoning. I'm not a fan of especially changing residential neighborhoods. I think that's a bad precedent, especially for this town. We're seeing a lot of development as it's coming before us now. I agree with Commissioner Barrett that if it was there, it would have definitely blended it. But that's not the issue we're talking about. We're talking about the spot zoning, and I agree. Now, I'm not basing my opinion on something else that I heard during the proposal, but it was something that's been bothering me since then, was one of the residents stood up and actually said that we should base our approval or denial based on the views of the Catholic Church. And I kind of found that offensive, and I don't think there's any place for that here at this meeting. And I just want you to know, I don't think, I can speak for the commission that I believe we don't look at it that way. It's basically a zoning issue, and I just found those comments reprehensible. So I will not be supporting this application.
Thank you, Commissioner Alessi. Just briefly, you know, the staff stated the requirement for a zone change. That's difficult to meet in this case, I think, if not impossible to meet. And we don't have a historical commercial corridor in that area. That site is not part of a historical commercial corridor. It's not a historically developed site that there was commercial there previously. This isn't Black Rock Turnpike, the Boston Post Road, Kings Highway, an area like that. And we're also not trying to clean up. Sometimes we'll change a zone to clean up a zone line. If you have, you know, overlaps on lines between a design industrial, design commercial, you know, center business, things like that. We've cleaned up things historically. This is different. And what really strikes home is when you look at the map that was provided, the zone map, it's all green. And that shows you that the color coding, that means it is all residential surrounding it. And that's where it's a dangerous, slippery slope if you take an isolated parcel in the middle of a residential area and change it. You know, that gives an argument to many other neighborhoods, many of our neighborhoods, that let's change this totally residential parcel to something else where it doesn't belong. So I would support my colleagues on this. Is there any further discussion by any member of the Commission? Hearing none, let's vote on the first item first, 5545 Park Avenue zone change application of St. Vincent's Medical Center to establish a design commercial district on land presently zoned R3. All in favor signify by saying aye. No ayes. Opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Abstentions? Item fails unanimously. Based upon the vote on that item, 5545 Park Avenue vote is moot. There would be no special permit because it's not applicable, so we need not vote on it.
I think you need to act on it because you do have an application.
I will vote. There is an application since it's not the right zone. All in favor of 5545 Park Avenue, special permit application of St. Vincent's Medical Center for a two-story medical office building, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Abstentions? Hearing none, item fails unanimously as well. Next item, 355 Pine Creek Avenue, special exception application of Scott and Jennifer Malik pertaining to the construction of a garage in a floodplain district. Public hearing was August 14, 2012. On this item is Commissioners Barrett, Jacobs, Jacobson, Suter, Alessi, and Parker. Commissioner Cannella, you've not listened to the tapes, nor have I. Is there a motion by any of those commissioners?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Barrett has moved to approve. Is there a second? Commissioner Jacobs has seconded.
Yeah, just to reiterate, this is a replacement, a two-story garage replacing an existing garage on the property. It is a special exception because our floodplain district regs require a special exception for any building equal to or greater than 250 square feet. Kind of predates the FEMA flood regs. So it's not out of the ordinary, only the fact that it happens to be in our floodplain districts. I'll leave it at that unless there's any other questions.
Thank you. Is there any discussion by any member of the Commission? Commissioner Jacobs?
In going over this, I feel that it has met the requirements. I just want to make a statement, even though I will be supporting it, that with sea level rise and that we have not had an actual hurricane hit this area in many, many years, if I were them, I would think twice, because with a good hurricane, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. But I will be supporting it. It's their risk. They are taking the risk.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobs. Is there any further discussion by any member of the commission? Hearing none, all in favor of this application, 355 Pine Creek Avenue, special exception application pertaining to the construction of a garage in a floodplain district. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries unanimously. Next item on to compliance is 760 Stilson Road, application of the Fairfield Board of Education for a temporary physical education facility in an AIDS zone.
All right. This is kind of a unique situation, as I'm sure this commission is familiar and has read. Osborne Hill School is undergoing some issues with respect to...
Sorry.
New mics, you get used to them, they're very sensitive.
You may have read and be aware that Osborne Hill is undergoing some PCB remediation. And one of the issues, pressing issue facing this school is that they will not have the gym available to them for the entirety of the school year. So they are looking at a solution for temporary structure to be placed on the left-hand side. As you're looking at this plan, on the left-hand side of the site, to be able to house, when the weather gets cooler, their physical education program is the gym is not going to be available to them. So that is the basic site plan for now. It has not yet been determined what type of structure. They're looking at a couple options, including a potential tent or of a modular type building. But it's a temporary structure. In either event, the footprint is likely to be in the location that's shown there, and the timing is such that they need to start making some decisions rather quickly to be able to implement this, given the unique circumstances they find themselves in. So, Sal Morabito is here from the representing the Board of Ed. If anybody has any questions about this, we did speak with the chair about this, and he said, "Go ahead, put it on get it on the commission's agenda so we can start addressing it." So. If you've got any direct questions, I would invite Sal to come on up and join us here if there are questions.
Yeah, Commissioner Jacobs. Let's have a motion for this first, perhaps, so we can discuss. Motion approved by Commissioner Kennelly. Is there a second? Commissioner Jacobs. Commissioner Jacobs.
Just wanted to know the length of time a temporary building is temporary.
Why don't you come on up here, Sal?
Mr. Morabito, why don't you come on up and get your microphone so you can sit with us. I know this is a little unusual. We have it on at this point in time, and that's the staff consulted with me, and I asked them to put it on the agenda because we have school starting in 2 days now. And the Board of Ed does have a location. They don't have an exact structure, whether it's a tent or whether it's some other type of a temporary structure. So that's why I asked Sal to come as well to just tell us where the board is. Things are changing, I know, minute by minute on this.
Yes, minute by minute. Thank you for allowing me to come tonight. I really appreciate that. The planning timeline for this, we're looking at it for the school year. We hope to have the gym remediation problem solved by then. We don't have enough data as to exactly how long that would take or any special steps that we would have to do because the school is occupied with that remediation. At this point, it's not something that I could tell you we only need it for 2 months. We're definitely looking for planning purposes that it would be there for at least this school year.
Do you follow up? No? And just so I'm clear, you have a location decided, and if I'm not mistaken, that's going to be the footprint, regardless of what type of a structure you actually put at that location. Is that correct?
That's the general location. The size of the building is dependent upon which option we go with, whether we go with modulars or we go with a structured tent. If we go with a structured tent, there's certain dimensions that it works out to probably be closer to a square, about 50 by 50. If it's a portable, it depends on what's available for lease at that point, but there again, they come in certain incremental sizes, so it'd be somewhere between, say, 42 and 48 feet wide, 60 to 65 feet long. We threw a rather large box on there to kind of keep ourselves safe, but we're looking for about 2,500 square feet.
And in any event, your whatever structure, type of a structure is put up, is going to comply with our coverage guidelines, our setbacks. Nothing will be beyond the setbacks to the residential zone.
Correct.
Nothing will be, you're not over coverage with either of these structures as well.
Correct.
And you're going to, I assume, comply with all building and health and safety codes as well?
Yes, we've talked with the fire marshals aware of this issue, the building department's aware of this issue, and obviously health department's aware of the issue.
Have you come up, I know the last time we talked about both, I think, Sherman and this building, we had extensive discussions about the children, sending them outside. At Riverfield, it came up as well. When we have portable classrooms outside, who's watching the kids? If you have provisions for that as well, if you're going to put a structure
Yes,
there?
the proximate entrance would be on the backs, the main entrance to the temporary structure would be on the backside. The location, if I could borrow this. The location of the door that they would exit from the building is right here. So they're going here, we would bring a camera, add a camera to our security system at this location. There is a pin pad access at this location, so this door does not stay open on the building. So that is taken care of, and that's similar to what we had done with portables previously.
You'll have staff supervision when you have the children going, the youngsters from the school out to the gym class, I assume? The
Yes,
teachers
it
take
would,
them out?
it would be class by class. The teacher would take the class to gym, just like they do inside the building, and give them over to the PE teacher at that point. So they are administered.
Now, if you go with a tent structure, do they have snow ratings for those? Are there provisions for leaving them out in the winter?
As I understand, yes. It's wind, it meets certain wind loads and structural loads for that use.
So,
Commissioner Kennelly?
So, I mean, I understand obviously it's a commerce, but so what'll happen is like in the winter months, the children will have to be dressed to go out of the building and then go into the structure. There's no way I can see from where it's located on the property it can mate up or something with the existing building?
We wouldn't be building a canopy or an enclosed walkway.
Nothing like
no.
that? Yeah. Okay.
I know they have a bit of a slope on the back. If you ever
Yeah,
walk out to the ball
I know that
fields,
edge there.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
Jumps up.
This is going to be a headache for the teachers.
It's not optimal.
Chairman,
Commissioner Lessie?
just want to ask, do you think it's necessary for some sort of temporary fence just to go from building to building for the kids? So they're not wandering off just in case?
No, not actually, and the fire department wants a
For
drive
access.
lane around the backside for equipment access.
Okay.
You're building this on existing parking spaces, correct?
We would be taking up some existing parking, yes.
How are you with your numbers of spaces, assuming the structure would give you permission?
We can live with that. It would make it tight for visitor parking, but it would keep the flow for pickup and drop-offs.
Do you have enough parking for all of your teachers and support staff?
Yes.
Commissioner Barrett?
I mean, I'm not sure this is a question for Mr. Morbido. It's more an observation. I do understand the urgency of the situation. Class is starting. We need the school. The kids have to have physical education. I'm just not sure, what we're doing this quickly, and I understand that, but what we're approving, what do you ask? We know the general location. We're not sure of the materials, and we know that when it does get built, it will comply with our regulations and setback requirements. I mean, normally, you've been through these, even for a portable, we have a special exception, there's a public hearing, people talk, we ask all sorts of questions. There's almost not enough here to ask a lot of questions other than try to get some assurances like Commissioner Leclerc. So what do you want us to approve now?
Whatever they build there.
Whatever, yeah. The
ability to move forward with the structure.
The ability to move
Right.
forward with some structure.
Of my understanding that it was a more discussion, not actually a special exception, so I might be here under the wrong
It's under
purpose.
compliance system now. but it's-
Yeah. We're looking for something, a structure that would comply with all normal setbacks within, if you want to cap it with square footage, that would be fine. If you wanted to cap it with 3,000 square feet, I know I can work within that.
Commissioner Boucher could
Because
address
any new
the-
I think I can address the difference between this and other applications we had for portable structures. The bottom line is, if this thing wasn't going to be temporary, this would be a special exception application. The fact of the matter is, it's kind of an emergency situation that they've been put into because of the situation in the existing gymnasium. The cleanup is going to take a certain amount of time. They want to maintain the building open. They want to maintain athletics for the children. So again, it's a temporary emergency structure. So we've approved similar, not schools, but other emergency temporary type things through compliances. Yeah, and I think what you're approving is the area that is indicated on this site plan, which it has been exaggerated, as has been mentioned, to make sure it covers both the option of the tent and a portable. But they do know the size that they need to maintain the athletic aspect of it would fit in that box. So the bottom line, what I will stress for you and also for the Board of Education, if that structure is going to come in and does not fit in that box, you'll have to, this board will have to be revisited with that.
So we're approving the box
Correct.
for the structure, and we should, we should probably condition it.
Yeah, the rest of the structure issues are going to be handled through the building, off of the building official, the health and fire, please.
Yeah, and the difference is, normally if it was a portable, we'd have to come here because of the nature of it. While if the school wanted to put a tent up for the fair, like the university does for commencement or for the Irish Festival, we don't approve those types of temporary tents, although they're very sophisticated, big structures. Because this is somewhere in the middle, it's the board, and we didn't feel that this should just be approved by the staff without coming to the commission, because while it is a portable type structure, it's going to be there for a significant period of time of up to a year. We should weigh in as a commission. This isn't there for the weekend, for the fair, or the special event. So we should have an opportunity to talk about it because it's more than, just for a few days. And that'd be an appropriate thing to keep the commissioners on board and make sure we're comfortable with this for a number of weeks or months. Commissioner Lessing.
Getting back to Commissioner Kennelly's point, why couldn't they put the proposed gym up against the building and just extend the pavement around the back a little bit more for the fire department? It'd be better for the kids, no?
The building on the left side of the building, the west side?
If we were to take the proposed gym and actually put it up against the building,
Okay.
and then just extend the pavement around the back, this way the kids wouldn't have to go outside.
I'm not exactly sure where up against the building. The structure itself, because it's not sprinklered, has to have a physical separation for building and fire codes. So that's why it's physically set back off of the building. Why we chose this area then, as opposed to, say, behind the existing gym, is because we don't know what construction activity we might need to have because of the gym remediation. It might involve heavy equipment. We really don't have the details of that remediation yet.
I suppose there may be structural issues too. If it is a tent, it's going to need the support lines, and if the snow's going to come off the roof, you may not be able to butt up against the school, so the snow could slide off somewhere. Unless you pitch it like a A-frame, yeah.
Tie it into the building temporarily.
Then that might be something that might be a fire code issue. If you just tied this into the building and came off at like an A-frame, it doesn't have sprinklers, so you can't just attach things to the school.
No, it has to be a physically separate building for building code purposes.
I believe we had a similar issue with Riverfield when they were doing those.
Yeah, Riverfield, we went through the same thing with that portable out back. We talked about the cameras and the fences and... For any further discussion by any members of the commission? Commissioner Kennelly?
At Osborne Hill, the kinds of things we get concerned about at Riverfield, for example, where portables, or Stratfield, where the portables become very much part of the culture over the years. I think it's very likely there's going to be careful supervision. This is a new structure, it's a temporary, so I think we should always be concerned about safety, but I think that's probably going to be very paramount on every educator's mind in this situation. So I think that's a good thing. Hopefully it'll be temporary.
Any further discussion by any member of the commission? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor of the application, compliance application, 760 Stilson Road application to Fairfield Board of Ed for a temporary physical education facility, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions? Item carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Sal.
Thank you very much.
Next item under compliance is 715 Post Road, application of Scott Shapiro to establish an indoor recreational facility, personal training in a portion of an existing building.
This is just an interior fit-up for a portion of the second floor of this building. There was a business in there called the Designer's Loft. If you're not sure where this building is, it's on the Post Road. It's got a Sherwin-Williams, a Subway store. Designer's Loft was a retail interior decorating store. This is going to be a personal trainer, as outlined. There's no impact on the parking ratio for our regulation, but it's a change of use from retail to indoor rec.
Again, this is next to the pizza restaurant we recently approved, Primo, or whatever, I forget the name of it, the chain. Planet Pizza, and diagonally across from the Mexican restaurant at McDonald's. Is there a motion on this item? Commissioner Jacobs has moved to approve. Is there a second? Commissioner Alessi, any discussion? And we do have our plans and correspondence from Mr. Shapiro in our packet. I know you've reviewed. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of application 715 Post Road, compliance application of Scott Shapiro to establish an indoor recreational facility, personal training in a portion of an existing building in a designed commercial district, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions. Item carries unanimously. At this time, we'll take a brief recess to reconfigure the room and the microphones. So for public hearing tonight, we have two applications. Zoning regulation amendment application of James and Brian Sekonchik, proposing a new Section 7.0 set-aside development, and 206 Homeland Street, site plan approval for 3-unit residential development pursuant to 830G. The meeting will stand in a brief recess while we reconfigure. Thank you. We're now at the public hearing portion of our meeting. We have two items on the agenda this evening for public hearing, which we will consider at the same time and open for discussion at the same time. The first is a zoning regulation amendment to application of James and Brian Sekonchik, proposing a new Section 7.0 set-aside development, as well as 206 Homeland Street, application of James and Brian Sekonchik for site plan approval for a 3-unit residential development pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 8-30G. Just for the members of the public and the applicants, you understand the order that we'll be proceeding this evening. We will begin with the applicant giving him and or his presenters an opportunity to speak to the commission. We'll then have a comment by our staff. We'll then go to the public for public comment directed to the commission, at which time, at the conclusion of which, we'll go back again to the applicant for any summary or final remarks. For timing, we proceed tonight until 11 o'clock. That's the curfew for the meeting. If we don't finish tonight, we'll reconvene in several weeks at our next meeting, and we'll take over and continue from where we left off. Again, this is an application pursuant to 8-30G of the Connecticut General Statutes. And I'll just take a minute to explain to the public the differences between an 830G application, as we call it, and some of the other business that you may have seen if you've watched us on Fair TV or if you've been to other meetings. This is a state statute, 8-30G. It's not a local regulation or a local law or ordinance. And it was enacted by the legislature in Hartford several years ago. It has not been repealed by the legislature. It's a valid statute, and we have no choice but to hear 8-30G, what are commonly known as affordable housing applications, because of the state statute that's in effect. It's different than a subdivision application. It's different than a zone change request, and it's different than a special permit or special exception or a compliance application. Under the state statutes in effect, the burden of proof is on the commission in case of an appeal, and in the event of appeal. The burden is on us, the commission, to establish that there is a sufficient evidentiary basis, that there is sufficient evidence in the record of a substantial public health or safety or other matter that we can legally consider before we can deny this application for an affordable housing development. Again, on appeal, the burden shifts, and it's on the commission to establish that there was sufficient evidence of a substantial public health or safety issue or other matter that we can legally consider before a denial, should a denial occur, can be upheld. The interests must clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing. These interests, these substantial health and safety issues, have to clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing in accordance with the statute and the case laws of Connecticut. And a decision cannot legally be based on a diminution in property values, the effect on local schools, neighborhood aesthetics, the effect on a neighborhood. Things like that are not valid bases for disapproval of an affordable housing application. So the standard's a little different. I just want everyone to understand that. It's different than a subdivision. It's significantly different than a subdivision application, for instance, because we can, this commission cannot base the decisions on the effect it may have on schools or a neighborhood or your housing values. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for their emails that were sent into the commission. They've all been forwarded. Any email that goes into the commission is distributed to all the members of the commission, and we do read them. And I'd like to thank all of you, with one exception, who unfortunately is an elected official on the RTM of this town, for understanding that we cannot respond to your emails as a commission. We're sitting here as an impartial body to listen to both the applicant, to listen to anyone who speaks for or against the application at the time of the public comment, to listen to the testimony, to look at the record, and our decision has to be on the record and can only be based on the record. There's no backroom discussions that go on with the zoning commission, with applicants. There's no off-the-record discussions with opponents or proponents of an application. Everything has to be on the record and is on the record with this commission. We have laws to abide by, including the Connecticut Freedom of Information Act. And that's why we don't respond to your emails and why we can't respond to your emails. If someone makes a valid comment, we can't respond back. We can't engage in that dialogue with you. We can't even engage in a dialogue with each other off the record. Everything has to be on the record, so it's fair to everyone, so it's a level playing field. So the applicant hears what's being said, so the opponents or the proponents hear what's being said. And that's why all the emails are part of the record. And again, I thank you, most of you, just about all of you, for understanding that. It's not that we didn't read your emails and that's why no one responded. We get them, we read them all, we look at them, we make copies of them, we put them on the record and consider them. We just can't say even thank you for your email because we don't want to engage in any dialogue with the public. So I just wanted to make that clear that is the case. And I apologize to the one elected official who doesn't seem to understand that and criticize this commission for, in her words, disregarding the citizens of Fairfield and somehow acting in a dereliction of our duty because we didn't bother to respond to her. Unfortunately, she's my own RTM representative as well as Commissioner Jacobs, which makes it a little more unfortunate that she doesn't understand how this system actually works and the laws and the rules in Connecticut. But thank you for all of you that did. And before we start, Mr. Sakonchik, I'm just going to read into the record the names of the people that have sent us emails. Again, and they're all part of the record, just so we do have that as part of the official record here. Again, we received correspondence from Marcy, and I apologize if I mispronounce your names, I'm sure I will. Marcy Spoilyar of 110 Brookridge Avenue, John Spoilyar of 110 Brookridge Avenue, Art and Bonnie Ratelli, 1280 Merritt Street, Thomas Kaminsky, 180 Brookridge Avenue, Rini Knorr, 83 Alberta Street, Robert and Linda O'Connor, 82 Edgewood Road, Betsy Grover McGrath, the Stratfield section, Allison and Howard Schenker, Tim and Rose Healy, 325 Homeland Street, William Neville, 86 Rena Place, Nancy Neville, 86 Rena Place, Jennifer and Blake Titrud, 180 Bayberry Road, Natalie Hammond, 215 Homeland Street, Hazel Lazarus, 56 Windermere Street, Julie DeMarco, 962 Stratfield Road, Philip and Sally Marcus, 258 Toilsome Hill Road, Leon Davidowski and Zoe Grosser of 261 Toilsome Hill Road, Chris DeSanctis, Robert Rackier, 110 Farmington Avenue, Brian and Sarah Friedman, 79 Brookridge Avenue, Jonathan Hammond, 215 Homeland Street, Carol Pontrelli, RTM District 9, another one from Carol Pontrelli, Carla Kaminsky, 180 Brookridge Avenue, David Anderson, 245 Homeland Street, Deborah O'Brien, Jennifer Hochberg, RTM District 7, Ellen Donnelly, David Walker, Windermere Street, Frederick Wheeler, 130 Marne Avenue, Brian and Linda Holden, Richard Duncan, Douglas Patera, 145 Brooklawn Parkway, Harriet Hirsch, 46 Northwood Road, Chris Galati, 10 Stone Lee Road, Louise Crowley, 1167 Stratfield Road, Marianne Garcia, Sean and Patrick O'Sullivan, 1161 Melville, Diana Pond, Sarah Williams, David and Alyssa Murnick, 237 Old Farm Lane, Nick Novia, 111 Farmington Avenue, Robert Manweir, 112 Eastwood Road, Joan O'Rourke, William Kipp, 122 Eastwood Road, Janet and Scott Burns, 75 Brooklawn Avenue, Frank Siplinski, 1189 Merritt Street, Patty and Carrie Dyer, 219 Toilsome Hill Road, David and Wendy Walker, 227 Windermere, Samantha Anderson, trustee, 264 Homeland, and Samantha Anderson, 245 Homeland, Paula Hirsch, Donna Susi, George Rockmore, 270 Homeland Street, David and Jill Brandt, 239 Toilsome Hill Road, Stephen Kelly Bacani, 1309 Merritt Street, Elaine Thomas Davis, Edna Thomas, 1170 Merritt Street, Thomas and Elaine Thomas Davis, 206 Farmington Avenue, Vincent and Elizabeth Maiolo, 141 Homeland, Marie and William Francassini, 100 Buena Vista Road, Keith and Jill Gunta, 90 Toilsome Hill Road, Margaret K. Mellon Smith and Richard J. Smith, 1221 Merritt Street, Stu Ginsberg and Lori Arando, 199 Toilsome Hill Road, Richard and Adele Marish, 161 Homeland Street, and Kelly and Mark Foster, 101 Toilsome Hill Road. So again, thank you. We've received correspondence from you, and those are all part of the record. At this time, I will open the floor to Mr. Sakonchik, the applicant on these matters.
Good evening. For the record, Jim Sakonchik. And just a check, can I be heard? Does that work? Thank you.
The microphone on, Mr. Sakonchik?
Take it off the stand.
Can you move it closer or hold it in your hand, please? Thank you.
Test 2.
Much better.
Thank you. James Sakonchik, I am the owner of 206 Homeland Street and one of the applicants. Brian Sakonchik, my son, has a financial interest in this development, being the person who would be in charge with arranging and building the project and marketing. The reason we're here tonight, despite the recent denial by this commission, is under the Section 830G rules. If there is a denial that has a substantial adverse impact on the viability, the affordability, or other problems with the application that can be corrected by modifying the proposal, you could come right back in order to work with the commission to come up with a plan that works under the rules of 830G. Now, as part of this second submittal, I made sure that the submittal contained all the information needed to be a complete package. And over the years, I found this is wise because sometimes it gets confusing on what was removed and what is still in. there is a great deal of similarity between many aspects of this package, most certainly aspects of the affordability plan that are just, Xeroxed and made part of the new package, but for clarity, everything was included in the modified application as a standalone. In the denial, the Commission brought up several aspects, and I'd like to discuss how we tried to address those aspects to mitigate them. The first was the applicant failed to demonstrate how this application advances the need to provide affordable housing. And I don't believe that is my burden to demonstrate, but in fact, that has been determined by others, and they have determined that Fairfield has only about 2% affordable housing as compared to the statutory goal of 10%. And the Supreme Court has concluded that the main purpose of Section 830G is to encourage and assist the need for development of affordable housing throughout the state. As a result, Section 830G is to be liberally construed as a remedial statute. And I've included the court references for that. The applicant's, your second reason for denial, the applicant's proposed Homeland Opportunity District does not create an opportunity for more units of affordable housing on the subject property than could be created under present zoning regulations. Again, as the chair has informed the audience, there is a right to apply under 830G, and this application will create 1 unit of affordable housing while creating 2 units of market rate housing. And the Commission also talked about the previous application having the affordable unit being 1 smaller affordable unit compared to 1 larger market rate unit. And we've corrected that by having all 3 units be comparable to each other in this application, meeting the expressed desire, I believe, of this Commission.
Could you tell the Commission how your application creates the opportunity for more units of affordable housing than could otherwise be created on the same parcel under our existing zoning regulations?
Yes, I will, but if I can have the privilege of addressing that about 10 minutes from now, because I believe that will be part of a response to a staff comment, and I think it would be clearer if I did it then.
It's up to you. I just thought you were going through our reasons for denial, and that was the second reason for denial, and that's
Okay.
why I thought. But it's your presentation, however you'd like to do it.
Okay, well, the reason is, yes, the zoning regulations allows for an accessory apartment, and I stand corrected, educated by Mr. Wendt, that the accessory apartment does not have to be confined within the walls of an existing building that existed for 5 years if it is part of an affordable application. I understand that regulation. I understand now how it works. However, under the state statute, even if the town has an affordable clause, the applicant does not have to follow those regulations, but may choose to submit his own regulations. I have chosen to submit my own regulations.
How do your own regulations give you the opportunity for more units of housing than you can already build? You can already come into the department and under section 6.0 and its subsections create and I know you're wrong with the numbers, it's actually 450 square foot affordable apartment on the structure that's there already. You can have exactly what you're asking us to do. You want to make 1 affordable unit. You can walk in the staff tomorrow in the office and have that unit of affordable housing.
Yes.
That's part of the dilemma. I don't understand what you're
Well,
trying.
here is the
why
dilemma.
you don't do that if you
Here's
want one
the-
affordable unit.
Here's the dilemma. There is no economic incentive to do that. The purpose of setting up 830G was to recognize that if they're going to create affordable housing and they don't want to spend state money or federal money to do low-income housing, which they did, was very common in the Johnson years, and there was a lot of Section 8 housing that was financed by government. What they came up with 830G was a statute to make it financially viable for the public to find a reason to create an affordable unit by using the incentive to allow them to have market rate units at the same time. The logic being that the ability to build market rate units, sell those units at market rate prices, creates a profit potential that can be used to subsidize the creation of the affordable unit and thereby have affordable development encouraged and hopefully built without the need for government subsidies. So 830G works because it allows the building of market rate units which finance the affordable unit. Under your regulation, yes, anybody in this room can reach into their wallet, build an affordable unit and rent it and accept the loss for doing it because it would be a loss. Under the income guidelines, you do not get enough income from an affordable unit to cover the construction costs. So consequently, the regulation you have in your books, I'm sure is rarely used because there is not it does not create an economic incentive to do it. In fact, it creates, in my belief, an economic disincentive to do it.
Commissioner Kennelly?
What's the basis for your analysis? Do you have a quantitative analysis?
No, it's just as I read 830G, and you're welcome to read 830G and pull your own interpretation of it, but I will recommend that you go to an excellent publication by Judge Robert Fuller on the Connecticut Practice Series, Volume 9A, Connecticut Land Use and Practice, specifically Chapter 51, and what I have just described, in a way I kind of paraphrased what he describes in his
I'm more of a
analysis.
Terry Tondro man myself and Fuller, but let me it's really a TPZ inside joke. Mr. Sikonchik, no, I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm asking you, you're telling us for the record, there's no evidence that you've done no quantitative analysis that would tell us, as we try to decide to support what you're saying here, you haven't run any numbers to tell you whether or not this is the case. It's your belief, you're saying, that there's no incentive, that this is, there's no quantitative analysis behind this. You didn't look at any data, real estate data, anything in the town of Fairfield, did you?
I did.
You did? Oh.
Yes, and I might add that my coach, my wife, Carolyn Sikonchik, has been a real estate agent for over 25 years, active in the residential field. I also have significant rental properties. I have about 12 tenants, so I do have more than customary experience in that.
I'm just asking, in the application, as we work our way through it, is there a quantitative analysis of the Fairfield market that shows these contentions you're making is there?
Yes, if my application is approved, it is financially viable that the units, the market rate units being built, will allow me to have sufficient funds to subsidize the affordable unit.
I don't want to interrupt your presentation. I apologize for not being clear. I'm not asking whether the analysis you've made of your own situation makes it economically viable. I'm asking you whether any kind of quantitative, you're asking us to vote on something that has a larger impact. Was there any kind of quantitative analysis done of the Fairfield market to sustain your contention that, that in fact, there's a disincentive here? You say it's your belief.
Yes, sir.
You have, I mean,
Yes.
you own some properties. Did you look at properties across Fairfield? Is there some type of analysis? That's what I'm saying.
Yes, sir. And the reason is it's got nothing to do with the Fairfield market. In the affordability plan, you will see that there is a complex formula that is used to determine the rent for an affordable unit that has nothing to do with the market rates in Fairfield, but in fact has something to do with median income, 60% of median income, and choose that or the lower of, I believe it is some kind of a Section 8 or FHA assumption of what is a fair rent. You take the lower of those two numbers and you use that. I understand what you're saying. It seems to imply, and you are correct, that rents in Fairfield are certainly higher than many of the surrounding communities. Unfortunately, I can't take advantage of that under the affordable guidelines.
But I guess I'm saying to you again is it would seem like there would be some sort of, in other words, you're saying to us that if you were to use the existing statute, you couldn't make a profit. You couldn't make enough profit. And I'm asking you, you're basing that on other properties you own in Fairfield, your wife's a realtor. I'm saying, is there any kind of quantitative analysis of the community that would tell you that this doesn't work? Because obviously we have had these, and I want to let you continue, but I'm saying, I'm looking for that. You know, I want to hang my hat on something more than your belief. I want to understand where the factual evidence is that the existing law as it is here, the local law, wouldn't provide a reasonable economic model for folks. Where is that data?
Okay. Included in the affordability plan as part of the package, there is an example of what is the allowable rent for a two-bedroom unit under the affordable guidelines. And that works out to, after utilities, this, that, and the other things. I'm going by memory, you can look at it, but it is significantly less than $1,000 a month, because you have to include all the utilities. You have to, that's their total cost that they're allowed to spend out of pocket, and that is kind of less than $1,000 for a two-bedroom unit would be an attractive rental to find in Fairfield, I believe, at this time. And that is, if you capitalize it, you will find that it really doesn't pay the freight. And I've done the analysis, and it doesn't work.
Commissioner Parker?
In this context, you used Mrs. Sakanchik as an expert in terms of Fairfield real estate. Did Mrs. Sakanchik advise you to buy this property?
Certainly.
Thank you. Folks, those of you standing, I apologize. We have the staff coming to set up some more tables and chairs for you, so you'll have somewhere to sit in just a minute. Actually, there may be chairs over here if you folks would like to sit. There are some chairs, and we have the custodial staff will set up a few more for you folks. You don't have to stand in the corner there.
There's a couple right
Okay, I think that I've highlighted the fact of the affordability plan. I would like to talk about the proposed zoning text amendment. Basically, that says Section 7.0 set-aside development, notwithstanding other commission regulations, existing separate assessors parcels and historical lots on recorded maps may be developed as set-aside development with new dwelling units that include affordable housing, provided the development conforms to the requirement of Connecticut State Statute 830G. And that was basically written in order to clarify the right to develop affordable housing on this location.
Sorry, Mr. Can I ask one
Yes,
question?
Mr. Barrett.
Mr. Sikonchik, if there's a right to develop affordable housing, why do you need a text amendment? It seems a fairly ambiguous text amendment. I mean, I don't understand why that's necessary here. To 206 Homeland.
I understand
I
that.
mean, you say, there is a law, there's a statute, as the chair said, 830G, which gives people a right to develop affordable housing, and there's certain differences in how those applications get treated. In other applications, there's certain legal standards that need to be met or don't need to be met, including compliance with our zoning regulations. So I ask you, why do you need to submit a text amendment here for something with, by definition, does not comply with our zoning regulations, nor does it need to comply with our zoning regulations?
I'd like to offer it. As this commission knows, based on your recent compromise on the 12-unit affordable plan, you have many rights in how you approve this. There you chose not to change any of the zoning text amendments, but simply approve the site plan. So as a commission there, you have many powers, ways to make this happen, and I would certainly welcome any way to get to the finish line.
Okay.
Mr. Sikonchik, your zoning regulation amendment it proposes a new section 7.0, quote, set-aside development, comprised of text which states, notwithstanding other commission regulations, existing separate assessors parcels and historical lots on recorded maps may be developed as set-aside development with the new dwelling units that include affordable housing, provided the development conforms to the requirements of Connecticut General Statute, Section 8-30G. Your site plan, though, because your application is for 206 Homeland Street, am I not correct that your site plan doesn't comply with your own zoning regulation amendments? Because you're asking us to separate existing assessors parcels, and you're making an application for a proposal at 206 Homeland Street. What you're going to then leave is 214 as a non-conforming lot by doing that.
I understand that logic, and I disagree with it. First of all, they are separate assessors parcels right now. There's a separate assessor number, bill, and address for 214, separate number, bill, I just paid it, for 206. So they're already separate parcels. Also, for clarity, they're separate lots on a subdivision of record. So in both cases, I think that there is reasons why they are separate. However, like you were talking, the whole idea of 830G is not to hinder the development of affordable housing due to the nuances of the zoning code. And as you know, there are hundreds of pages, thousands of words in the zoning code which develop many, many trips to the development of affordable housing. And the whole idea of 830G is how can we make this work provided the housing is developed in a safe manner. And I believe Section 7.0 was the intent to do it, but again, what I'm really looking for is my site plan approval for my 3 units.
Would you not agree that what you're calling as 2 separate lots actually has a house which straddles the property line, and portions of the existing house sit on what you're now calling a separate lot, and the in-ground pool is sitting on what you're now calling a separate lot? It doesn't seem to me like 2 separate lots when you have your house sitting in the middle of it.
Would you hold that thought? That is actually a considerable portion of a later part of my testimony that has a great deal of background information on that. And the reason I'm doing that is because you may have received a memo from Mr. Wendt that brings up certain aspects And later, I'm actually going to ask him to read that into the record so that it would be a nice lead-in to my response to that, which I think would be a nice way to have the meeting flow.
Your presentation. I'm just basing that off the map I saw that has part of the house sitting over the property lines. Commissioner
Wasn't
Alessi?
the last application he was here to divide the lots? Wasn't that with the previous
Yes.
application?
Yeah, that was
last
him.
time you were here, you said it was one lot and you wanted to divide it to two, is that correct?
I'm sorry, it was never my intent to create the impression that there was one lot. It has always been my understanding and belief that they are two separate lots.
No, I believe last time we found that it was one lot, and this is what I'm not understanding, Mr. in terms of a remedial application. Last time, I think you said it was to, the department said it was one single merged lot, which I believe is still their contention, and you were trying to build 3 units on what you regarded as whatever, 206 and 214, 3 units total. Now, this application, which I know you're getting to, is 3 units on 206, somehow completely disregarding that there's a structure standing on 214. So it's now 4 units on a single merged lot, or your contention 2 lots. I fail to see how
Well, wasn't the
that's
last
remedial.
application to divide the properties, we have a 5,000 square foot lot?
I
Section-
don't believe he
Section
ever
8 zone.
called it a subdivision. He would have to answer what he was doing. I don't believe that was ever, he was dividing the lots. I believe he thought they were already divided or something.
Yep.
So
I
what
will
was
s-
the purpose for the 5,000 square foot in the second residence A?
It was my intent, it was my hope, it was my belief that that extensive proposed zone change was the way to go that a board like yours would find desirable. I now understand that that's not the way you like to do things. I understand it because you denied that application. I understand it because you chose to also not approve the zone text changes for that 12-unit affordable housing. With that education, I am now back with what I hope is a simpler, straightforward, more direct application, addressing the concerns expressed by the commission, including the fact that the affordable unit was not comparable in size to the market rate units, and keeping it simple, I hope, by just talking about 206 and how 206 would have an affordable development on it that would have 2 market rate units and 1 affordable unit, which would match and be covered under the 830G guidelines.
But Mr. Sakonchak, the last time you were here, you wanted a zone change because you said it was one lot and you wanted to knock it down to a 5,000 square foot lot. And you were proposing to change the whole Residence A to a 5,000 square foot lot.
That is not true. I never,
Then what was the purpose of asking for the zone change for a 5,000 square foot lot if you contended that it was 2 lots the whole time?
I think I've answered that question. I thought that was the type of thing to do. The commission didn't like it. It is no longer part of this application. And again, I want to state for the record, I have never felt that this was a merged situation. I believe, understand, and I think it's true that they were 2 separate lots. They are now 2 separate lots, so that this is a valid application for 206. The purpose, again, of Section 7.0 is to further clarify how this can be developed as an affordable housing application.
Commissioner Parker and then Commissioner Jacobson.
Make it abundantly clear in the last public hearing that your intention was to sell 2 separate properties. Your preference was to build a single home at 206, and you wanted to sell them as separate properties. And we asked why you didn't go to the zoning board of appeals rather than coming to us with this application, and you said because you felt they wouldn't approve it. So you clearly understood it as a single property that you wanted to divide.
Because this question of merger, because this question you're talking about is so very important to the commission, and because Mr. Wendt went in detail on it. I do have an extensive presentation on reasons why they are not merged. So that it is almost, first of all, with the proposed text amendment 7.0, the purpose was to eliminate the need for debating the question of merger. With 7.0, the whole debate, I believe, becomes moot.
Where is the text for 7.0?
It's in the package.
Brian, turn left.
Pages and numbered where it's on.
It's right in the...
It's in a call as well. Commissioner Jacobson?
Yes, so if I understood correctly, you're going to take away the pool and the porch and put 3 buildings on that lot?
I am
So
going...
that would leave the other house with a much smaller area? Because the
The,
pool
uh,
and the porch are part of that 206 lot.
If you go to the assessor's records, if you go to the deeds and the land records, 214 is a 5,000 square foot lot on the assessor's record, and on the deed is a 5,000 square foot lot with a house. That house happens to have a porch that encroaches on another person's piece of land, my piece of land.
Correct.
My piece of land has a pool and a little bit of a porch that encroaches on it. That porch has been there for a considerable period of time. So it has certain rights under adverse possession. My proposal is to simply build 3 units on 206 Homeland Street.
Well, the pool is partly on 206 Homeland.
Yes, well, let me show the graphics.
Are you suggesting you can adverse possess against yourself?
I'm not. They're 2 different owners.
The 2 lots have different owners?
So you're going
Yes.
to adverse
Brian
possess
owns
against
one,
your
I own
son.
the other.
You're claiming it's open, notorious, adverse, and with a claim of right? The legal standard for adverse possession in Connecticut for the requisite number of years? Is that what you, if that's what you want us, if that's what you're telling us, I want that for the record.
Okay. Let me, again, I think it's important that we avoid going down tangents that needlessly confuse the situation. Let me make clear what the application is for as it currently stands on the plans. It is to remove the pool and put on 2 structures, one a single-family home, the second a duplex home. There is no proposal to remove the porch because I do not believe the existence of that porch in any way creates a health, safety problem. So since the guiding requirement under 830G is health, safety, and other such aspects, I do not propose that the porch needs to be eliminated no matter how you define its status.
Thank you. Did you find what you were looking for? You found what you were looking for, 7-0? You got it? Okay.
Since we talked about the development, let me show up some graphics.
Just for the record, Mr. Sakonchik, is this part of the, if you could just read into the record what this drawing is? I assume it's in the package we have. Just so we have that on the record, please.
Where is it?
This is a modification of the package you have in the record. The one you have in the record,
Is this what we have in your, we have, just for the record, your modified 830G application, and in that are several maps, drawings, one of which is what you're holding up, 211-067, Site 1, drawing 7712 to 20
Yeah.
to 26 p.m.
yeah, what's on the board right now is Site 1. This is what is in the record, and this is it shows when you're up close where a proposed unit would be and the property lines. For the purpose of this public hearing, I did an enlargement of the graphics here so that maybe it'd be easier to see from a distance.
But that's fine. I just want to confirm for the record, Mr. Sakonchik, that what we have in the package is the same as what you're showing us. That's just a bigger version of it. That's all. If not, we need that for the record if you're going to have a different drawing than what we're looking at.
I'll leave it for the record.
You're going to what?
I'll leave it for the
So
record.
that's different. The one you just showed is not the same as we have in front of us?
The one with the light on it right now, which
Yeah.
is entitled A2,
A2?
is different and is not included in the package in the record. It is simply an enlargement of the pertinent details to make it easier to see in a public hearing setting.
We have an A2 in the record. This is a different, do you want to see what you've given us? We have something 211-067 A2, and at the bottom it says drawing 3 net 7/7/2012, 2/21/14 p.m.
Okay. The one you have is 1 inch equals 10 feet.
It's actually 1 inch equals 4 feet, actually.
Oh, you have A2?
You want to approach Mr. Sakonchik? I'll show you what you gave us. Maybe you want to just, I just want to make sure this is what you give us, these two. You can state that for the record so we know. Thank you. Hold on, one second, Commissioner Parker. He's going to state for the record what drawings we have, because I want a clear record of this, that's all.
Okay, the drawings they have as part of the package in the record, I stand corrected. It includes a drawing entitled Site 1, which shows the site plan that I'm looking to get approved. It includes sheet A2, which highlights the lot, the 5,000 square foot lot, and the 3 units at a larger scale. It includes a drive site distance plan entitled Site Distance Plan, which shows certain traffic geometry. It includes architectural plans and floor plans, which are other things that the commission requested at the last go-around.
Quick, Commissioner Parker, if you use the microphone, we're not recording. We can't pick that up. Just ask the question again, please.
Mr. Sakonchik, this elevation that you're showing now does not have dimensions on it. How tall are the buildings and what are the dimensions?
The buildings, dimensions, the height of the building conforms to the 35-foot height requirement that is presently allowed in Zone A. We're not exceeding that. The floor area of the units, we have 2 floors of just over 500 square feet, so that conforms to the commission's regulations for 1,000 square feet for a 2-story building. It includes a garage in the lowest level. It includes a first floor that has a customary layout, kitchen, dining room, a living room, and it has a upper floor for bedrooms, bathrooms. So it's a pretty typical layout. The unit, as shown in the site plan, would either be a duplex side-by-side, or it would be a standalone building for the second unit. The architecture is customary, trying to go to the kind of colonial theme, very compatible with many types of homes currently exist in Fairfield, so it should blend in with a typical Fairfield
Brian,
house.
Commissioner Jacobson?
could you just repeat, whether it's going to be one standalone home and one duplex?
Yes? Looking at the plot plan for the proposed dwellings A2, which has a scale of 1 inch equals 4 feet on the full-size version. The property is 100 feet boundary line by 50 feet by 100 feet by 50 feet. Homeland Street is over here on the right-hand side. And Brook Ridge Avenue, I always lose it whether it's avenue or road. Brook Ridge Avenue is on the top of the sheet. And we have a standalone unit on the side over here. It is got a green space all around it. And we have a duplex unit over here. And there's about 3,000 square feet of actual green space on the lot, so each unit is arranged so each would have its private yard on the side here, a yard here, and a yard over there. So trying to make it so each unit has a lot of ground space it can use. Tried to make it so each unit has access to a comparable amount of green space.
Let me just pause for 1 second. We have to switch the tape, Mr. Sakanchik. You may continue. Thank you.
It's also arranged along Homeland Street right now. There is a series of homes every 50 feet. So there is a accepted pattern of density in that area. And the homes are typically of a footprint about the same size as the duplex unit. So even though I don't have to, there's been some attempt to try to get this to blend in. And then they're arranged, again, this is 100 feet along this axis, so coming down the street again, you see a dwelling and a dwelling, or at least a dwelling structure and a dwelling structure separated about 50 feet. So a lot has been done so that when this is built, in many ways it will blend in with the neighborhood, which already is accustomed to having houses every 50 feet on center.
Mr. Barretts?
You talk about blending in, Mr. Sakanchik. Could you just tell us, not that our current regulations matter, but what your lot coverage would be from these two structures, 3 units, on your on the 5,000 square feet of space that you're intending to build it? And then what's your total floor area coverage? If you build these buildings as designed. You know, just a rough number would be fine. I mean, there's actually a calculation we go through to get it, but...
If you look on site...
What's the footprint of the buildings and what's the total square footage of the buildings?
Thank you. There is a customary zoning table in the upper right-hand corner of sheet that's called Site 1.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the parameters here, maximum height 35 feet provided, open space provided 3,000 square feet or about 1,000 square feet per dwelling, maximum lot coverage 39% provided.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's 39% is what these
Yes.
3 units are covering.
That is correct.
And then in the floor area, you're going to have trouble reading it. What is that? 96?
The maximum building floor area is 97%.
Okay.
covered.
Well, I mean, you compared it to our zone. In the A zone, the maximum lot coverage is 20% and the maximum floor area is 40%. So this is 97%. So
That's true, yes.
I'd say the blending in argument kind of falls away there.
Well, you got to remember that in your floor area ratio, you have to count basement. You have to count any attic space that's more than 7 feet tall. You know, I got some tall roofs over here. So consequently, the maximum building floor area seems high, but that's because I try to stack many levels in order to minimize the footprint. The actual footprints, again, if you looked at an aerial photo after this is built, you'd be hard-pressed to pick these units out as being different from the rest of the neighborhood, because the rest of the neighborhood often has a house in front and a garage in back, so you know they are also covering that kind of footprint. Again, it's not perfect, but there was some attempt to try to make it blend in, even though under 830G I don't have to. The attempt was made.
Right. And I apologize for my eyesight. I could not read that because this map is a little small. But now, and I see that it's 97% floor area and 39% lot coverage. Thank you.
Commissioner Parker and then Commissioner Alessi, please. I'm sorry.
Mr. Sakonchik, in your original application, you made it very clear to me in particular, because I asked the question about your intention with this property, and your most desirable intention would be to build one house on it and sell that. The units that you were proposing, one unit affordable and another marketable, fair
Market
market. But your intention again was to sell all 3 units, 214 and 2 units on 206. What is your intention with these 3 units?
First of all, I only spoke for my property at 206. What my son's going to do with his property at 214, he's going to decide. He just got married. There's some discussions going on that I'm not part of and I don't want to be part of. I will tell you that the intent here at 206 is to develop these units and market these units.
As a single unit?
I'm going to market in any way allowed.
Well, I mean, you couldn't sell them as separate units.
That, I can rent them, I can sell them, I can treat these units, I believe, with the same right and privilege that anybody in town can treat their units. I'm not looking for any special thing here. I'm just looking to build these units, have them as housing in town, subject to the same rights and privileges as any other housing in town.
So you're not planning on following your affordability plan you submitted?
That is not true. Part, parcel, deed restricted, no getting out of it. There is going to be encumbrances on the land records that mandates the affordability plan be followed. In fact, there are suggested deeds to be filed as part of the affordability plan in your package.
For which unit?
Under the regulations, I can choose which unit it is. Often that comes into a situation when you're renting. You might be in a situation where, the unit that was affordable, somebody moves out of, and then a second unit somebody moves out of, and then the person coming to rent the affordable unit can choose A or B. You know, there's no deed restriction on a rental situation on which unit is affordable. However, one at all times has to meet that criteria. And again, that is explained in the package. One always has to be available as an affordable unit.
Are you talking about 109 or 99? One of those two?
Any of the 3.
How do you plan on effectuating that? Let's just say Mr. Barrett's, myself, and Mr. Jacobs are your three purchasers. He buys 119, I buy 109, and he buys 99. How are you going to ensure that one of us always has our unit affordable at the same time?
If they're going to be a sold situation, again, if you read the affordability plan, there is an entirely different requirement, because one of you three gentlemen would have to meet the income guidelines for the affordability plan in order to be eligible to buy the unit. Not anybody can buy it. Again, it's an affordable unit. The idea is to take advantage of the right for people who may not be making the big bucks. My daughter started as a teacher. She didn't make a lot of money the first year. You got policemen in town, firemen in town. You've got 20-somethings, struggling these days to get their first job. They may not be making the big bucks. Here we have a situation where you have nice, new housing mandated to be used as a rental unit or sold to people who have limited income, and that income is defined. You take your medium income for this area, take 60% of that, and then take 30% of that, and that is the maximum that person can be expected to spend for his housing, including all the costs associated with the housing: heat, electricity, gas, whatever is required. So consequently, there could be an excellent opportunity for somebody who happens to meet those guidelines to purchase a unit here and be able to move into Fairfield and afford it. Whereas the person with those same income guidelines would not have that opportunity due to, like you described earlier, the market in Fairfield, which does have high rents and expensive housing.
So under your plan, let's just say that I'm the person in the 109 and I meet the affordability guidelines. I'm a teacher just out of college. I can afford that unit. I purchased that unit from you at whatever as an affordable unit.
Yes.
Next year, I get a few steps on my contract. I get a master's degree or a doctorate. I get married to another teacher who has a few steps on her contract. Pretty soon, we're making significant money, a lot more than to qualify us for affordable housing. What happens under your plan in that scenario? Can I live there with her as long as I choose for the next 40 years? And
Yes.
none of those units are effectively affordable at that point?
Yes, may I explain that?
Sure.
You go by the rules, I didn't write them. The affordability plan incorporates the rules written by the state for that. So in a way, you're a lucky person. You have a house, you have a low cost, so you're a lucky person. You are much more comfortable with your income, but there's a string. The string is when your wife says, I got the second kid here, we need a bigger house. When you go to sell that unit, you have to find a buyer who meets the same criteria you did when you bought it. So consequently, you went in very affordable, and when you sell it, somebody else is going to go in at a very affordable level.
Do you think that you can...
Commissioner Parker?
Sorry. Do you think that you can treat the units separately? Could one be sold and the other's rental?
If such is allowed in Fairfield, yes. Can I go on to traffic? Would that be appropriate?
Yes, sir. However you choose.
The commission had concerns with traffic safety here, and as part of the package, there is a traffic study plan done for the proposed driveways, and it is, probably 10 pages in length. But let me highlight the main thing that, first, the traffic on the roads here are relatively light, and there's an excellent standard incorporated in here. And there was a Community and Environmental Defense Services, kind of a group that is very concerned about traffic and neighborhood quality of life. And it's something that I incorporated. It's something that's available on the internet. And they note that traffic volumes of less than 1,000 vehicle trips per day do not cause a significant adverse impact on the quality of life. So they have kind of set a floor. A road can take well over 1,000 vehicles a day, but they've determined that 1,000 vehicles or less has no significant adverse impact on the quality of life.
And that's based upon something you cited from this article, Traffic and Neighborhood Quality of Life, that you got on the internet?
Yes, in the area that's kind of in the cloud.
Yeah, no, I understand, but it appears to be something from a Community and Environmental Defense Services group in Maryland.
Yes.
Could you tell us about that group? Are you a part of that?
I just, in our traffic collection of books, this was an article that we had grabbed and kept. And it, I think, talks about the level of service ratings A to F, but it also talks about kind of a higher quality of standard, and that is, not can the road take the traffic, but when does it, start becoming a nuisance?
Mr. Chairman,
Brian?
I think you should also point out that that study was done 25 years ago.
Fine.
Commissioner Jacobson?
Okay, I was also going to say it was done 25 years ago, but on the study, you did the study?
No, this is a traffic article.
No, the study that you gave us.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so you stood there and counted, you said it's based on 250 car trips per day?
Yes, and I think that's a very
And you
conservative-
counted it, you stood and counted it?
Oh,
like-
yeah, I was there for I was there so long, the neighborhoods called the police on me.
Can you tell us
What's
what your
this guy doing?
What are your credentials for doing traffic studies?
I've done traffic throughout my career of 40 years in engineering. I've done, as it describes there, thousands of similar types of driveways and houses as part of my practice in civil engineering. I certainly have more than ordinary knowledge in traffic. I have knowledge enough that this morning I was on State Highway 229 West Street meeting with 4 people from the DOT, a contractor, as well as town officials discussing a widening of that state highway, a design I did with my hands.
Normally, we have, traffic experts that come and present an independent report, not the applicant. This is unusual.
Well, could I actually tie into that? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman? Mr. Sekonchik, I'm reading with interest this letter that you addressed to the chairman, or you didn't address, actually, a gentleman, Anthony Tranquillo.
That is correct, yes.
He's a project manager with Kratzer Jones and Associates.
Just recently, for
Right,
the
within the
past
last-
35 years, he was town engineer for the town of Southington. He spent the past 35 years
Right.
sitting in a chair next to the Planning and Zoning Commission in Southington as their
But just-
technical expert
Right.
for every application that came in front of the board.
So he had a long-term employment as an employee of Southington.
Yes.
And during that time, he reviewed over these 35 years of experience, many of which, he says here, many projects I reviewed over the 35 years I spent with Southington were designed by James Sekonchik of Kratzer Jones and Associates, Inc. So this gentleman who left public service and 3 months ago joined Kratzer Jones Associates, your firm, the
Yes.
firm you work for,
Yes.
is now providing a letter with no data saying that, essentially supporting your findings related to traffic.
It's what is
I'm just-
called a peer review.
Peer review, okay.
I have a question.
Commissioner
Mr. Sakonchik, when you did this traffic study, I understand you were out there counting, but what tools did you use to measure sight lines? I see on this thing you say clear sight distance, 300 feet, but like, what tools did you use and where did you measure it from? Was it, what height was it at? You know, where did you expect the car to be?
Yes.
And then,
If you look at the sheet S2 sight distance
yep,
drawing, you will see each driveway depicted with a vehicle leaving, and he's beyond the hedge line, and you can see lines radiating from these vehicles going down in both directions. And by any standard, there is more than adequate sight distance for this situation, especially considering that the velocity of the traffic on Brookridge Road, Brookridge Avenue, is throttled by the stop signs, the series of stop signs on the straight through, and the necessary movement of a turn from Homeland Street or from Merritt Street. So consequently, if a car is pulling out, he's able to look both ways. He can see if any traffic is coming. If traffic is coming, he just sits there where he is until the traffic leaves. And then when there's no traffic coming, he can pull out into the road. And of course, once he's pulled out into the road, should traffic appear, they will see him just as easily, and as is the custom of the road, they will, of course, adjust their speed for the vehicle that's now on the road. So I will say that by any standard, this is very safe and is not even challenging in terms of determining that.
but what tools did you use to measure the distance? When you say clear, like what? do you
I'm a
use
surveyor.
surveyor's tool?
Yeah.
How do you, I mean, usually we're getting things like it's 153 feet, 276 feet, you just say clear sight distance.
No, if you look at the map, you will see, here I got 220-foot plus sight distance.
Right. I see
Picture
that.
one, and there you see the picture of the vehicle right here, looking out the window,
Yep.
and you can see the distance. So I actually positioned vehicles in both these locations, and I stood there and looked and took a series of pictures.
So you took pictures to get this?
Oh, yes.
Those were the tools, a camera?
Camera and my eyes and my expertise.
Did you measure intersection sight distance? That's what this is? The intersection sight distance?
Yeah,
How far you can see?
it's an intersection sight
Did
distance
you
for the
also
driver.
measure stopping sight distance for cars coming up the road to see the driveway? That's a different, there's two different sight distances.
That's right. And
Somewhat familiar since we hear this
Yeah.
like every week.
And-
There's a stopping sight distance and intersection. So my question to you is, did you measure both stopping sight distance, intersection sight distance, and did you compare it to the CONDOT standards? And if you have, can you tell me what the CONDOT standards are for a 25-mile-an-hour zone?
Okay, now first of all, you go by the actual velocity of the vehicles. You may have heard of the 85th
85th
percentile.
Right, I am sorry. So you take
Yep.
the average speed and the 85th percentile
Yep.
of that. Yeah.
And what happens here is when a vehicle is leaving these driveways, he can see any vehicles on Brookridge Avenue that's going through the straight section over here that may be traveling 25 miles an hour. He just waits and lets them go by. Any vehicle that, if he can look, he can see if any vehicle is going through this intersection. This is a dead end. This is a straight through street, so these guys, for safety, have to stop here before they cross this. Merritt's more of a through street. So a vehicle coming through here stops and then has to go. A vehicle coming down Brookridge Avenue in this direction stops. Actually, he stops here before he goes. So in both those situations, a vehicle leaving here is actually observing vehicles that are stopped before he even has to make a decision. Now, any vehicle coming on Homeland Street is doing a turning movement, or any vehicle coming on Merritt Street is doing a turning movement and a turning movement. So during those turning movements, they're going at best 15 miles an hour. So a vehicle turning there at 15 miles an hour would have the ability to see the vehicle leaving the driveway, as well as the vehicle in the driveway see the vehicle coming over there. So you got very low speeds, and you've got a, I can clearly state, a very safe situation because of the unique short block, because of the stop signs in the main street that you're pulling onto, and the necessity for any other vehicles to do turning movements.
So from watching this traffic, what did you determine the 85th percentile speed was?
15 miles an hour, because the critical location is when you first see the vehicle, and that's when it's doing a turning movement. And to stop for 15 miles an hour, I mean, you could do it in a very, very, very short.
What tool did you use to measure the speeds? Visual. Just they were going slow. Seemed to be going slow.
What you do is you actually go in your own car and do an aggressive, around the corner. That's one way of doing it.
Okay, we're used to getting traffic reports. We say the average, the 85th percentile speed is 23 miles an hour on this road, or 27, or 35. And I'm not seeing that here. I'm saying, well, they were going pretty slow, and there's a lot of pictures of cars turning here, and there's arrows, and I do see all that. I just don't see the quantitative thing of what the sight distances are, what the required sight distances are, and how you achieve that, and where you measured it from, and what tools you used to measure it.
Okay. Now, the other thing you got to remember is I've been doing this for 40 years. And when I learned the trade, it was much more of a hands-on technique. You didn't sit in a corner and watch traffic. You got in the vehicle and you did some aggressive driving so you can really get speed. And then, of course, you would record the 85th percentile. And by the way, we didn't do it with radar guns. We would tape off certain areas, and you'd stopwatch a car going through that, and then stopwatch it going through the other. So you get, pretty accurate velocities. Back then, we used to work on the major roads a 6-second gap. Now they start talking about 8-second gaps with all the older drivers. But again, those are techniques that are very important when you have roads with high velocity. Here you going into, you're off the books. All those things you're talking about are very important when you're on main drags. Here you have to get out of the books and do it the old-fashioned way. Does this make sense? And certainly in this situation, there's no problems with these driveways.
Mr. Sakonchik, could you, for the record, tell us the sight line distance for a car in the driveway of 99 Brook Ridge to a vehicle proceeding in a northerly direction on Brook Ridge approaching the intersection of Homeland Street at the stop sign?
Yes. He can actually see 300 feet all the way down to Widmer Street. But that's not really relevant because a car would stop at Widmer Street. A car would stop at the stop sign of Homeland Street unless he wants to play, Russian roulette by crossing the intersection without doing that. But even if the guy was, what I'm saying is he can see 300 feet, but more importantly, he has a very clear sight distance to a car at the stop sign. It was probably doing a rolling stop, not a true stop, but again, he has all the sight distance he needs to make a decision.
So for a vehicle leaving 119 Brook Ridge, what is the sight distance of a vehicle proceeding in a westerly direction on Homeland Street, effectuating a turn to the north on Brook Ridge Avenue? And at the same time, that same vehicle, what is the sight distance to a vehicle proceeding westerly on Merritt Street, making a turn to the south on Brook Ridge Avenue, or its line of sight of a vehicle coming from the dead end south on Brook Ridge? You have at least those three which have no legends at all whatsoever as to the number of feet for that car leaving 119. It just says clear sight line with no objective data on any of those.
That is correct, because the objective data doesn't matter. You have a situation here which is not unlike what you have at a shopping mall. These vehicles doing turning movements here or a turning movement there have the same safety concerns you would have if this was a row of parked cars going down here or parked cars going over here. And, you know, you got low velocities due to the turning movement, and experience shows it just works. You do have about, in some cases, 40 feet of sight distance, in some cases 50 feet of sight distance, but it's not the number that matters, it's the fact that a vehicle leaving 99 can see a vehicle doing the turning movement, and more importantly, a vehicle doing the turning movement has a clear line of sight to the vehicle leaving 99.
We've all
So,
had, with all due respect, we've all had clear lines of sight of vehicles that have crashed into our cars or we've hit, because you see the car before you have an accident, but because of the reaction time. We see this constantly with applications. I may see your car, but if I don't see you until such a time as it's too late for either one of us or both of us to stop because of the speed and because of that line of sight, we may see each other, but the distance, I think, is very important, is it not? To determine whether you have an adequate time to stop once you see the vehicle. So if I'm pulling out of 119, sure, I can see the car making a left-hand turn, but if I can't stop because I don't see it until it's so close that I can't stop or you can't stop in time.
you have more than both cars have adequate time to make appropriate decisions. Again, this is no different than what we drive when we're going to Stop and Shop, when we drive when we're going to the mall. You have a situation where you have a stop-controlled situation. You have cars pulling in from the main road, turning on to where there's a series of parked cars. The velocities, due to the turning movement, make it very easy for either car to react. Yes, you do get accidents at the Stop and Shop, but an accident is always due to negligence, it's not due to the inherent layout of the vehicles, because we all know there are thousands of cars that come and thousands of cars that turn on a typical shopping center without accidents happening. And this road, again, in my opinion, could not be safer as far as traffic's coming and going from these driveways when compared to most other roads in Fairfield, because most other roads in Fairfield are straight through, many are straight through, many have cars pulling out with much higher velocities on the main road, and, you know, on a comparison basis, there's few situations that lend itself to inherent safety than a situation where cars are stopped by stop sign or cars are doing turning movements which inherently limits the velocity of the vehicle. And it's during the turning movement that both the car leaving either 99, 109, or 119 Street can see the vehicle as soon as it sneaks around the corner. They can see each other. So you have low velocity and you have more than adequate sight distance.
And one last thought. I drive much differently. If I'm driving in Osborne Hill School parking lot, I'm certainly going to drive much differently through the parking lot than I will once I get on Stilson Road outside. I drive much differently in the Stop and Shop parking lot than I would driving down my own street, because you know there's people, there's children, there's everyone backing in, backing out of spaces. I don't see how you can say that driving down these streets, you know, you somehow is the same as driving in the Stop and Shop parking lot, but I don't know if my colleagues have any questions.
Yeah, I do. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Sukanchik, you just used the term experience shows. You're describing, I think what you're referring to is your experience over the years, kind of comparing things. In other words, when you look at this, I guess what I want to make sure I'm clear on is this. If I were a judge, and a judge had an evidentiary record where there was a clear traffic study done to indicate whether or not traffic safety was in fact maintained, appropriate traffic safety was maintained, using the appropriate tools and the proper collection data, and was authorized and carried out properly the way we have report after report coming before me. And then neighbors or people in the area just offered their opinion. As the judge, I would say, slam dunk, scientific data, carefully accrued with tools, not eyesight or anything else, past experience judging, but
done on the site, you know, is the evidence I need to say that this is the case. But it seems what you're describing to me isn't so much a scientific process as your estimation based on your years of experience. You've looked at this area where you have this property, and you're saying, based on your experience, looks good to you. You've used your eyes, as you described, as your tool. Is that a fair assessment of what you've done here? You've used your eyes, you've sat in your car, you've used kind of the old school method to sort of assess based on what you've done in the past. That's what you've done here. Would that
The
be
last
correct?
time I testified in front of a judge on a traffic issue was pretty much a whole day of testimony, situation of an industrial site in Waterbury, the ability of tractor trailers to safely enter and exit a parking lot, and whether or not a side road, not unlike this, could be used in order to have the tractor trailers enter the site without undue problems. Now remember, this is Waterbury, 40-foot street, in a residential area on one side of the street, old industry on the other side of the street, with tractor trailers entering a site forced to go down a 6% grade.
I absolutely recall you describing that testimony in your last application, and I don't mean to cut you off, but here's the thing is, that doesn't exactly answer what I'm asking you, and I apologize, because I want to be clear as to what we have here. That's what I'm saying. You did recount you're doing that kind of testimony in the past. What I'm saying to you is that normally what we receive is a report based on statistical data collected with tools, et cetera, and engineering tools. What it sounds like what you're providing us is what you did in Waterbury, in that example you gave last time and you're giving here, which is you're a person who deals, you're an engineer, you deal with this kind of stuff, you look at this, and you've looked here, you've been in your car, you took photos, so it looks right. There isn't a report here with true data collection done, with tools and all, it's your eyes. You're giving your best estimate based on your experience. That's what you described, right?
More than that, please turn to I think it's the last page of the traffic study, where it says Highway Design Manual 2003 edition. It looks like this.
To the back page of the application.
Back page,
package.
thanks.
That's the last page of that plastic
I
bound
appreciate that.
package.
All right, I got it.
Yep. Now, this is right to January 2012. And here we show, in the circled area, typical recommended driveway locations where they got the corner radius, the tangent C, and the radius R.
Right.
And there below you see where they have the residential driveways circled 5 foot, 5 foot, and 3 foot. And in the pencil marks above it, I'm comparing their recommendations to what I am providing. And in each case, I exceed their minimums. Now, if you look at that graphic, it is an identical situation to the type of situation we have here, where you have two public roads intersecting each other, and on that graphic, it's even on the right-hand side of the road, if you look at it, it mirrors it, and here is one of their standards showing the recommendations, and I exceed those recommendations. So again, you don't see anything here talking about traffic speed, sight, distance, because it does not apply in this situation as evidenced by this graphic.
Well, let me ask you, and I appreciate that contention, but what I'm concerned about is that in past, you mentioned one of the applications we had in which, we had an 830G here. We had 830G applications before us, and in fact, the kind of statistical analysis of how cars pass through the area, using appropriate tools, not just eyesight or past experience, or comparing it to articles, but actual in-the-field testing was done. Now, my point is what you're presenting absolutely is part of your presentation and should be considered. But it does seem as though what you're describing here to me is akin to your experience applied to this situation. You're using this as an example of something that, you know, another area, you're kind of matching it, but we've had other residential developments where we did in fact get statistical analysis done with data collection for this type of 830G application to define what the threat regarding traffic safety was. What we seem to have here is comparisons, your estimation of the situation based on your experience. My only concern is that we may entertain testimony in opposition in which folks who may be in the area or something and have years of experience of dealing with this might offer their observations. Some may be engineers as well, I don't know. But one of the things to sort of hang our hats on in these applications, and one of the things we really have to consider, is that kind of detailed analysis. But your contention is that you don't believe that a data collection-driven analysis is required or necessary to establish your contention that there's not a problem related to traffic safety.
Well, first, a couple of comments. Just clarification, please. You were talking about that traffic analysis. It was my understanding that this commission, as part of its reasons for denial, felt that even that analysis was inadequate. And that as I read the court record of I'm talking about the 12 units of affordable housing, that the judge determined that the traffic analysis was, even though you said there were problems with it, he determined that it did not exceed the need for affordable housing. And I have to go to this.
Sure.
It seems like I'm hitting a wall. I've told you, based on good evidence, that the traffic volumes here are well less than what even advocacy groups try to keep traffic below, 1,000 units. I've told you that the vehicles approaching these driveways are forced to go very slow due to stop signs or due to turning movements. And I've told you that there is more than adequate distance between the vehicles to see each other, using as an example just a normal parking lot where you have many cars pulling out and people also turning, and at Christmas time aggressively trying to get some empty spot down to the end. And I've also showed you in the highway design manual how this manual shows this plan conforms to those requirements, and I think that is more than adequate to meet my burden of showing that this can be reasonably done safely, and certainly safe enough that these affordable units should not be denied due to traffic issues, because the need for affordable is very strong, and there is no clear, convincing safety problems that anybody has credibly been able to show in this situation. But there's a preponderance, I believe, or certainly sufficient evidence to show that this is a safe situation.
So, and I appreciate it absolutely, and I don't want you to feel as though I'm not listening. I am trying to understand, and I appreciate that. But again, this idea that you are telling us, in the case you described, what happened was is members of the commission believed that the statistical analysis done with data collection, there were issues related to the amount of delay and things like that that might have risen to the level of a real significant threat to local safety, and that's where what the rub was. But your point is that your view is that even that kind of analysis isn't what you need to provide.
To me, that in this situation, that's smoke and mirrors.
Okay,
that's just somebody throwing a lot of data that really doesn't mean anything.
Right. Okay. That's fine.
Commissioner Parker, use the microphone, please. Thank you.
In that case, was the judge in error?
I believe the judge was very correct. I visited that site. It's a nice, quiet neighborhood.
No, I'm saying in terms of overriding our opinion on traffic situation.
The judge was correct.
You're saying it's all smoke and mirrors.
What I'm saying is the traffic engineer was correct, but I'm also saying that in these low-velocity situations, while the traffic engineer did do statistical analysis, if I was a town engineer reviewing that work, I would say, well, that's very nice, but it doesn't make sense. Let's get down to the pragmatism. Does it work or does it not work?
Right, can I just want to, Mr. Sakancha, that may be the case. I'm familiar with the case that you're talking about with the 12 units. I would just say that that case, the applicant did hire a professional traffic engineer. He did do a study. He did show the sight lines as compared to the required sight distance, and he made recommendations on the street. I actually think he had a recommendation that nobody park within 25 feet of either side to keep adequate sight distances. But I would just say, in that case, they actually were measured. Whether we made the right decision or not, I don't know, but I was just saying,
And
we
again,
did
this
have that
is
evidence in
measured,
front of us. And that-
it's drawing to scale, and you can get each measurement by just putting a scale to it, and the measurement is what the physical geometry is.
Sure.
Just guys,
Canella?
I just want, but my point is, Mr. Sakantra, what you're saying essentially here is a data-driven analysis, in your view, because of the environment, isn't required. That's what you're saying. I mean,
Yes,
right?
the
I mean, because-
velocities are too
because
low, the traffic volumes are too little.
That's the smoke. I'm saying that's the smoke and mirrors you're saying. Is that? Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Sakanchik, do you know how many cars are parked on the street there during the day or during the night?
Yeah, cars park on that street all the time. Cars park on Homeland Street, Merritt Street, it's common.
So you think that's going to affect the sight lines as well?
No.
No.
No, I mean, you have cars parking in streets all over Fairfield. Parking on streets is not inherently dangerous unless there are situations that make it dangerous, and there's no dangerous attributes
How many
here.
cars are parked on the street there during the day now?
I only saw, the day I was doing the traffic analysis, I only saw one car parked in the street. It was actually facing the wrong way. I believe it was a lady doing work on one of the houses.
Do you know what time of day that was? What day?
About 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
What about a Saturday or a Sunday?
Let me stay with this afternoon.
Okay.
The other time I saw some cars parked was when the school buses, in the past they were talking about the school buses coming, so I was very careful to hang around for the school buses to show up. And then, whenever school buses come back, it's about 3 o'clock, 3:30.
Yeah, but it's summertime.
No, I did it when school was in session. And then you would have parents park their vehicles, waiting for the school bus to come. On this particular street, there's, pretty few cars, pretty rare that cars park here. Other streets in this neighborhood, you get more intensive parking on the street.
5 cars?
It varies.
How many cars do you think will be adding to this application?
Your standards talk about I gotta make provisions for 2 cars per unit, so 6.
I guess the question is not how many cars our regulations require, but how many cars we are anticipated. We may provide for a certain number of parking spaces by our regulations. That doesn't mean that in reality that's the number of vehicles a household has.
Understood, yeah.
Commissioner
Yeah,
Parker and
this
then Jacobs.
evening, earlier this evening, going by your house, there were 2 cars parked in front, and directly in front of those 2 cars, there was a red SUV that I believe belongs to your neighbors. There was a car on the other side of the street there. I mean,
Yes.
there was quite a few parked cars on Homeland, just around the corner.
And that's true, and I don't believe that's a problem.
Commissioner Jacobs. And then
If you did your traffic study while school was in session, why didn't you include it in your first application?
The first application was based on my experience, and to be honest with you, I was really surprised when the commission felt that there was a potential unsafe situation here, because I find it so safe that it's almost it just works. So because the commission was particularly concerned about traffic, I felt it was necessary, and you made it a reason for denial, I felt it was necessary to listen to you and do a full traffic study just to get it on the record on why these driveways work good.
But you did the study when school was in session, before the first application?
No, I did the study after the denial.
You just told us you had seen all of this when school was in session.
That's correct. You denied before school got out of session.
Okay. Next question. You said that these statistics aren't relevant because of, you're saying because of the low speed, so we don't need a statistical analysis. You also said that in your method, you put in lines and use a stopwatch to determine speed in your day. Is that what you did here?
Yeah,
to
but not
determine speed?
over here. In this situation, the only way you can determine the speed of a turning movement is to, play with the car. Again, you can't do it by radar because the vehicle is going around a radius. It's that is how it is done. I mean, again, sometimes I believe the young kids get too enamored with their toys. What you really got to get back to is old-fashioned engineering.
Before we go to Commissioner Barrett's, I just want to note for the record, our denial of this last application was June 26, 2012, which was subsequent to the conclusion of the school year in Fairfield, by a couple of days. Commissioner Barrett's.
Mr. Sakonchik, just, again, it's not so much the traffic volume that we're interested in, it's the sight lines and the safety of the driveway. So now, you said 2 cars per unit. That's a good round number. For each of these units, could you just explain the parking plan, like where are they going to park and how much room they have to park? I'm looking at drawings that look like, I see a garage, I see the word garage there, that's part of this multi-story unit. I see what looks to be like 15.7 feet to the road. What kind of cars are going to, where are you going to park 2 cars per unit there? And not even to mention the other house that's on that other property that might be a merged lot, that's really the 4th property here that's owned by somebody named Sakonchik, or the 4th unit proposed if there's 4 dwellings here. Where's 8 cars going to park there?
Well, under your regulations, I supply a garage unit over here.
Yeah.
I supply 17.2 feet from the property line to the face of the unit, but you get about 8 inches in front of the garage door, so I have 18 feet there. So you can stack a car in the garage and in the driveway. And yes, you could make a little parking space to the side over here, but I think it's unnecessary and undesired.
For units 109 and 99, one of the parking spaces provided is in the garage. They could pull into the garage.
All 3 units have a garage.
Both units have 1-car garages.
Yeah, all 3 units have a 1-car garage each.
And the second space would be in the driveway behind the garage.
That's correct.
Okay, so for units 109 and 99, for example, there's like a shared driveway there. So there could be 2 cars parked there and 2 cars in the garage.
Correct.
So that'll keep them off the street, and they'll park on that 17.2 spaces.
Correct.
Okay. If a car's parked at 109 and 99, is he expected to back in? How is he going to get out of that driveway with a car right next to him and still see?
Well, first of all, he can, because the cars are parked beyond the property line. Now, you see this hedge over here?
Yeah.
A very nice hedge, which we're trying to keep. It offers a lot of privacy to the neighbors and to us. And all the pictures you see over here, the car leaving without really having its rear end in the street gets the driver's eye over here while backing out, and he can see in both directions and leaving the hedge. It works.
Kind of like backing out of a space at Stop and Shop, except it's a driveway.
Yeah, I just back out. And, I will say this stacking, my wife and I have stacked cars for 25 years, so I'm good at it. Basically, it takes exactly 3 minutes in the morning if I have to move her car out, move my car out, park, and put her car back in the garage. I have to go to work, I'm in a hurry, I know I can do it in that amount of time. It works. We stack.
Or you could just put 1 car in the street and then they won't block each other.
No, you could just leave it, if you got the right time of year, or you don't have worries about snow plowing and stuff like that, you can leave it in the street.
Okay. And then this other unit, just another thing, the property dwelling at 119, it looks like there's only 15.7 feet to the street line.
No, actually, that's to the overhang.
Oh, that's the overhang, okay.
Again, to the actual, it's the same dimension, 17.2.
Okay.
Do you have a drainage plan for these lots?
Pretty much just following the same drainage pattern. It's sheet runoff in all directions.
But it's not showing...
If you
I mean,
go
we're
to
looking at a
the,
lot of impervious surfaces on here, and I don't see any drainage on any of your blueprints.
if you study if you were to study sheet Site 1, in the back of the unit, there's a roof drain that comes along here, a roof drain that ties into an existing roof drain on the adjacent dwelling, which, so we're tying into existing storm drainage right over here on that dwelling.
But that's a separate lot.
Yeah, and we're getting an easement in order to do that.
Well, the other house is sitting on this lot anyway, so we'll
Drain,
tie into it.
you want to
Drains are gonna
drain
go,
rainwater from the building onto a different lot?
Yes. And, you know, easements, you guys do it all the time. You see easements.
but it's,
I have an existing drain, I'm going to go to it. I have an existing drainage, I'm going to head to it.
Is there an application?
There's no topographic map either.
Yes, there is. Sheet number, Site 1 has grading on it. So here's the 156 contour going around. Here's the 158 contour. There are existing grades all over the place. The full grading plan is incorporated.
could you just explain to me one more time, the drain, part of 206 gutter is gonna share with 214? Did I misunderstand that?
214 has existing drainage on the
Right.
ground, and we're going to connect to that drainage.
Is there an easement on the property now?
No,
Yeah.
we'll create it. Right now, it's sheet runoff.
I'm just trying to figure out why there's no easement for the porch there.
It's one lot.
I know,
Yeah,
I'm just trying to figure out why there's no easement for the porch.
Mr. Zakonchik, where is your easement note on map, Site 1 map?
Right over here, it says easement to existing drain, right where I'm pointing,
Where are you pointing?
Towards the bottom.
which is right in front of existing dwelling 214.
No, I understand that, but right over here, next to the porch, it says see easement note, and I don't see an easement note on this map. I don't know
Yeah,
if
it's
this
right
is-
over here. Okay,
I was talking about two different easements, though.
yes, you are talking about two different easements. Over here, screen porch easement note. Lot 138 grants an easement to Lot 137 to retain, use, and maintain portion of existing screen porch that encroaches on Lot 138.
So that's not a drainage easement note?
No,
that's a porch
that's,
easement note?
that's a separate easement. You've identified two of the easements, yes.
Mr. Sakonchik, Mr. Chairman, can I ask?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Canali, go ahead.
I'm sorry. You've got a 46%, I think, is the lot coverage under this design. I wondered if you could just talk about, oftentimes when we discuss...
39%.
39%, okay. Look, I thought it was higher, but okay. Can you talk about current and post-build in terms of the drainage? Often we get these kinds of, for runoff, for the runoff. What is it, what would it be today versus after you've completed the project? Can you talk about that for runoff? Will it be better, same than the existing, worse? What will it be? I mean, do you have data to talk about that?
Okay. I believe Fairfield Engineering has certain standards that apply to all developments on, I mean, they have published standards. So I'm just going to be subject to that like everybody else. The engineering department has certain requirements for preventing any excess water from leaving. So, like anybody else, I'm subject to that. I got to go get a building permit, and I have to meet their requirements.
Right, but I'm trying to understand how this would affect drainage. And I'm asking you,
as the person proposing this, what have you done to analyze what putting these structures on this property will do to the runoff? Have you done that analysis?
Yes, I've looked at the engineering website. I've studied their requirements.
No, stop. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be combative with you, but I'm just trying to understand, on this property, what is existing for the runoff, and what do you project it with these new structures? I don't want to talk about other places. I want you to tell me what analysis was done that you can put into the evidentiary record related to runoff. I don't want to talk about, I want on this property. Have you done that analysis?
Yes, I have.
Okay, what is that analysis on this property?
On this property, which has to get a building permit, it has to meet the requirements of your engineering department, which are published. And they talk about certain means of addressing your storm water, means that seem to delay and retain water so it doesn't leave the site quickly. So, and these are the same requirements that would be required for anybody going for a building permit, whether or not they have to go in front of this board. I will meet those requirements.
Mr. Sukanchik, again, I'm just asking this for the record. In past, when we see an application, engineers come to us. They say to us, here's the situation currently, here's what the runoff situation will be when I build. Do you have an analysis of that based on the current property and what you propose to build? Have you done that analysis?
Yes, I have, in the way I explained it. And, you know, maybe you're looking for supplemental information, but again, your engineering department, if you go to the website and actually read their requirements, I think they got a boilerplate that I could follow that meets their requirements. They just set up the boilerplate.
So the answer is that you have not completed an analysis. You will eventually meet standards, but you have not completed an analysis regarding what the current and post-build runoff situation will be. You have not done that physical analysis.
I have not done that
Okay.
because
I just
there's
wanted
been
to-
no requirement under your regulations where you have a boilerplate set up.
I'm sorry, I got to correct that, Mr. Secretary. 100% of the applications that we get, whether it's a subdivision, affordable housing, a special permit, has drainage calculations that are reviewed by the town engineer as part of the application, as part of the record. Has the town engineer reviewed the drainage, the pre- and post-development flows of this project?
That's up to staff, I believe, those reviews. I submitted it for all possible review. I don't.
Were there any drainage calculations in the application, the post-development flow? This isn't like a light thing when you say it'll meet everything. Every other application we get has that. Yours doesn't. That's what Mr. Kennelly is getting at.
Well,
It's not like eventually you'll meet the building codes. That has to be part of the application for us to properly assess it.
You know, and this is exactly what I'm hoping to achieve as part of this. Again, I thought it was taken care of. If you want drainage calculations, I'm happy to do it. I mean, I'm happy to supplement that.
It's not supplemental, it's a base requirement. Every other application provides that.
Not a problem, I can provide it.
It's not like some do, some don't, eventually they'll meet.
Mr. Chairman, just...
Commissioner Kennelly, then Commissioner Jacobson, then Commissioner Parker.
By the way, obviously this has been, Mr. Sukanchik, it's been a long presentation, so you're going to understand everyone gets a little tired, so I appreciate that. The rationale for this is simply, just so you, for the questions, is simply that beyond whether or not this is applicable, in other words, if this works as an 830G, but if we see it as an 830G, really the two issues, and this is why these questions have been like this, I think, and why there's some frustration, is the two issues inevitably, as you've discussed, that we have to meet our burden to approve or deny in this matter, are traffic safety and the impact related to water courses, to runoff and these kinds of issues. So that's why there's a concern, because as Mr. Barrett's pointed out, every project that we get normally will have an analysis done by the applicant of this kind. So just don't want you to feel like you're being singled out.
Not a problem, not a problem, and I'd be happy to supplement as necessary.
Right, but we have to vote up or down on what we have. That's what
Well,
I'm saying.
no, again, under the 830G, it's supposed to be a dialogue. We're supposed, just like we're here tonight, I basically had to reapply in order to get new information on the record, and I don't see why we have to do that again. If there's something you need, and this is a perfect example, this is important to you, there's no reason why this hearing cannot be continued and that information can be supplied for the next meeting. And, I'm looking tonight to find what else can we do to at least get all these little checklist items down so there's only one or two very important issues that you finally have to decide on. I think this drainage one is an important one, but I'm
Yeah.
sure it can go away with proper engineering, which I'm happy to do.
Okay, and again, it's not a little thing. It is,
Commissioner Jacobson?
Most of what I was going to say was already said, but I have to make it clear that objective facts do matter.
No, I
And we
agree.
have to decide based on that, and these aren't little issues.
I didn't say they were little, I say they're achievable, I believe, like any
Well,
other
usually,
application.
they should be presented, and we need to have them, but I won't repeat what the others said, I do
And
support it.
again, I apologize, this is my first application to Fairfield, so I too am in a learning curve.
Mr. Sikonchik, with all due respect, this is a different application than last time in the sense that you have 119, 109, and 99, three different structures that you did before. So drainage is relevant. And as I look at this drawing for the first time, one thing that jumps out, it looks like you've got 119 gutters running over to 109, where they're tied into 109, which then goes over to 99, where it ties into them, then starts heading west, goes under a sidewalk, ties into 214, then heads to the southwest under two driveway easements, then cuts across 224. And then if I'm reading this right, you don't tie into the storm sewers, you tie into a sanitary sewer. And I don't think you can tie your gutters into a sanitary sewer, unless I'm reading this wrong.
That is a storm drain, I know the difference, that is a storm drain.
If I'm following the line, the dotted lines, and am I mistaken that 119 doesn't go into 109 to 99 to 214 under the easements, connects to 224, which then goes over to S, which is a sanitary sewer?
Existing storm drain.
Well, look at this street. You got an 8-inch water
Well,
and 18-inch.
I understand there's sanitary too, but in clarifying, no, it's not connected to a sanitary.
Then why does the line, I mean, is this a mistake then? This line right over here, the bottom runs into a sanitary. Where's the street? Look over here. You start over here, and you kind of come over here, cut across here, go over the driveway.
Oh,
pick up
no,
this
no,
house,
sir.
then tie in.
I believe you're connecting to a grading contour there. That is not the drain. The drain,
Then the drain just dead ends in the middle.
well,
of
the
nothing.
drain goes underground there. I can't see underground better than most people.
Aren't all these drains underground? I assume all the
Well,
pipes
the
are
new
underground.
drains that I depict will be underground.
So you're going to drain to the surface on 214, the water from 119?
No, there is
109?
an existing storm pipe at that location that I'm tying into.
And where does that pipe go?
It goes into this town storm drainage.
Why is that not on the map then? I mean, sewer lines are drawn in, sanitary lines are all drawn in, water's drawn in.
I'd be happy to clarify the drainage, hopefully to the satisfaction of your customary reviewers.
I just don't understand the map, and I don't understand that. I've never seen a contour line that makes 90-degree angles. Usually contours kind of flow and ebb and have elevations on them. This thing has
Well, what happens when you go into a curb,
three 90-degree angles on a
yeah,
contour line.
which is how you depict a 6-inch curb. When you hit a curb, you run along the curb until the road grade matches the top of curb, and then it cuts across.
Well, you don't have a curb in the middle of the street. You've got a 90-degree bend in the middle of Homeland Street at the top of the 18-inch storm line. Then you've got another 90-degree bend right in the middle of the driveway easement for 224. Then you have something like almost a 90-degree bend on the next easement.
Yeah, that's the customary way to show crowns in a road. And remember, your storm water always runs perpendicular to your contour line, so if you look at the 90-degree bends, it makes sense because it goes perpendicular to one gutter on one side and perpendicular to one gutter on the other side. Well, let's...
Commissioner Kennelly?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sikonchik, one of the things I think is going to be critical is you wanted to make the case, and I don't want to, you can choose what you want to do, but we have about 25 minutes. but you wanted to make the case for why you believe this is two separate properties. And I think that the significant, I don't, you can do what you want to do, but it strikes me that you may want some time, since you developed evidentiary materials, to talk about that.
Yes,
Is that okay? Would you be willing to discuss that at least during
No,
this time?
I think that is vital
Right,
because
'cause you-
this is, let me run with that.
Yeah, Mr. Saccoccia, you know, just for the record, as I tell every applicant, just because we stop at 11 doesn't mean that you need to be concluded by 11. If you're not done, I don't want this to appear that we're rushing you at all. No. Wherever you are at 11, we'll stop, and then we'll continue with the next hearing at that point.
I think there are some important things here that should be taken tonight.
Well, that's fine. I don't want you to think you have to finish by 11. That's what I'm saying. That's all. Thank you. Is this different than what we have already, Mr. Saccoccia?
It looks like it's dated Sunday.
It's dated Sunday, so it must be, okay. Do you have one staff and one for the record? Yep.
Okay, now let me kind of keep the pace going here because I want to get a lot of information on the record, which I think people are going to want to think about. Staff comments, I think you received certain staff comments that this over here talks about, and I would like to number the staff comments 1 through 9 and discuss each one, which I'm doing here on this Saccocci's response as applicant. Now, his first 4 paragraphs are just kind of summarizing why we're here. A modified application has been submitted. Its responses for the denial is no longer a zone change component, and they're talking about the accessory apartments. So, you know, paragraphs 1 through 4 is just a summary, no response required. Paragraphs 5 through 7, he talks about the concept of accessory apartments. He is correct that accessory apartments do allow an expansion, but as we talked about earlier in this application, that's fine, but I'm stating for the record the fact that the municipality may have enacted its own affordable housing zone and regulations, but a property owner does not have to use those regulations. He can submit his own proposal. I have done that. Paragraph 8, he talks about the purpose of zoning text amendment 7.0, and you can read this, and to summarize, basically I'm saying is I believe the concept of whether or not merger has occurred here is an unnecessary sidetrack, whereas really what we're trying to do is, at least I'm trying to do, is get affordable housing proposed for 3 units over here, and I created 7.0 to make sure that those sidetrack obstructions are not hindered to getting this site plan approved. Paragraph 9, here's where we get to the crux of the issue. He says that my existing units do not conform to 7.0 as submitted, and I kind of say I wrote it so it would because they are separate assessors parcels and they are certainly separate historical lots of record. And then in the appendix is just basically background information supporting those contentions, for example, copies of the assessor's records and stuff like that.
Something new? This is something new that you can discuss.
Mr. Barrett, ask a question, Mr. Saccoccia.
Mr. Concha, just before you move to the new document, I just make an observation. On the other document, I see the ownership history on both lots are identical in terms of the dates. Both, I don't say both lots, excuse me. Both assessor parcels were sold as of the same days. Most recently on November 16, 2011, for $219,000 and $81,000, or a grand total of $300,000. Right? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, now this next one is
Counsel,
going...
Before you go to the next one, you made the representation that, or the assertion that these are in fact separate parcels or lots. But if I look at the record, I see that, for instance, in 1988, there was an application for a certificate of zoning compliance to put the screened porch, and there's no indication that this is anything but one lot.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We do have a limited 15 minutes, and my next presentation goes exactly to that. So if you would privilege me to at least get this information out, I think it would be very useful to have a background for that very question you're doing. This whole package is to answer that question.
So you'll address the 84, the 87, and the 88
You got it.
compliances. Thank you.
Okay. Now, again, the question of merger, I believe, is mute because of Regulation 7.0 and because of the power of this commission to approve the site plan as submitted. However, Mr. Wendt has seemed to make merger an important issue, as you noted with those documents that you have. So I thought it would be very important to put on the record the information why merger has not occurred over here. And this has to do with the permits done in the 80s and other information. And this is a packet, it's about a letter of about 3 pages, so let me just read it into the record. While the applicant has submitted zoning text amendment 7.0 that makes the question of claims of merger moot, because Mr. Wendt has placed information in the record with a claim that merger of 214 and 206 Highland Avenue, subdivision lots 137 and 138 respectively, exists and merger should be considered by the commission, we must respond with information to the contrary. There is sufficient evidence to indicate that merger does not exist at this time. History of permits in the 1980s. There is important information in the January 25th, 2012 letter from attorney Anthony A. Denorfia to James R. Wendt, copy attached A1. This letter describes many reasons why merger has not taken place. Next item. Intent of Calvin D. Larson, former owner. Mr. Wendt claims that merely a signature on the pool application shows an intent of Mr. Larson to merge the properties. A stronger indication of Mr. Larson's intent is the fact that he paid high taxes for 206 Homeland Avenue as a separate lot for over 20 years after signing the application, and his estate through his son marketed and sold the property as separate parcels. Now, just to summarize the information in Attorney Denorfia's letter that you'll be able to read and study later, basically it describes how 206 was developed with a pool. That pool was located in the only location that a future house could be built on that lot, specifically 7 feet from the property line of 214, 30 feet from Homeland Avenue, which is the minimum setback for a corner lot, 30 feet from the sideline with the neighbor, and 22 feet from Brookridge Avenue. Now, the 22 feet is the key. If it was a merged parcel and a pool was built on a merged parcel, it would have to have a 30-foot setback. It was built with a 22-foot setback. It was built exactly where a future house can go. Effectively, the pool was put where the foundation of that house can go in the future. I've got 40 years of experience with this. Different zoning enforcement officers interpret regulations differently. And I can certainly see how a zoning enforcement officer can approve a pool permit to go exactly where a future foundation would go. You know, if it's used for a pool for an interim, why not? It makes sense if the zoning enforcement officer believes it makes sense. So consequently,
Commissioner Alessi?
So what you're saying is they put the pool there because they want to put a foundation in?
yes, and I'm also saying that,
Wait a second. You can't tell us, based on your experience, that zoning boards are putting pools where a future house can go.
well then, well, okay, and we might...
That you cannot tell us that one.
But then how can it be 22 feet from Brookridge Avenue when your zoning regulation requires, 30 feet? How did they allow 22 feet when 30 feet is required by your regulations?
Maybe they asked for a special request for it. Maybe they showed some sort of hardship. I know a pool is different to get a hardship for, but maybe
They didn't get a variance.
you get a variance.
They did not get a variance.
Well, there's got to be another reason besides they were going to put a pool house foundation there, and they decided to fill it in with water and make it a pool.
Okay, but my point is, and it's an important point,
But you, no,
we still have to fight with the issue of how did the pool get located 22 feet from a road. Okay, now that's one point. Let me put a series of points in. Each one could be disputed, but that's the point. The point is we're looking at zoning permits that were granted in the 80s, and we're trying to put ourselves in the mind of why those permits were granted. Now, I think me and Mr. Wendt will both agree that some kind of errors were made. Certainly, there's a question of why did that pool be located 22 feet from the road? That's a very important question. Either the zoning enforcement officer didn't think it mattered, or the zoning enforcement officer made an error in allowing it there. But in either case, something did not go according to your regulations, at least as Mr. Wendt currently interprets them.
yes, but you cannot leave that assumption to the fact that it was supposed to be a house foundation.
No, but I can say, when searching for a reason why it happened, searching for why it was done with such precision to the setback of where a house would go, I can certainly speculate as well as anybody else can speculate on why that occurred, but most certainly the important point is we have to discuss why it's 22 feet, not the required 30 feet.
Now, hold on, let's jump ahead a year. Let's go to 1988. You've got your swimming pool in. And, you know, I did a little addition a few years ago, and I had to get my site plan. I had a porch off the back of the house, and I had to show dimensions to side yards, to my neighbors, to the back property, to both sides, my coverage, to make sure I wasn't going into setbacks. If you go to 1998, I'm looking at the plot plan. There's no line dividing this into two lots. In fact, this is drawn as one large lot with a swimming pool, with the porch, and the only setbacks from the porch are given from the Homeland Street, which is very relevant, for 22 feet, and 46 feet from Brookridge Avenue. Nothing showing that it's encroaching, that it needs an easement, that it's sitting on someone else's property. If I showed anyone in this room what this is, they're going to say that's one piece of property with the house and someone put a porch, a screened porch on their property. How could you say that that doesn't show merger?
Okay, now here's an important point that has to be considered. Again, Attorney D'Onofrio talks about it. That very plan you have, that very plan which says conforms to zoning, does not conform to zoning because, again, that's an as-built of a pool that clearly shows the pool 22 feet from Brookridge Avenue, which clearly shows a violation, yet there was no request for variance on the pool.
This pool doesn't show any dimensions from Broadridge Avenue of the pool. It just shows in-ground pool. There's no dimensions there.
It's a scaled map. Okay.
It's not listed as, where's the scale on the map if it's a scaled map? It doesn't say 1 inch to anything. The only dimensions you've given me are the size of the porch and the dimensions from property lines. This almost looks like the same map I drew when I added the porch on my house, frankly, with the same dimensions off the sides of my house, or any of us would have done if we're doing an addition.
Okay, now let's keep going, because I only got 5 minutes and there's more important information I've got to get on the record so we can discuss it next time. I got to set the basis.
Excuse me. I need one point before you go on, since you're using Judge Fuller's book here. You haven't taken a copy of the title page. Do you have the publication information on that? What year was this published?
I can supply that, yes. I can supply that.
Okay.
Let me submit that as part of the record. I will supply that. Again, I think for the sake of time, I would like to read into the record the rest of my letter. Now let's go to the 2012 application, which is pertinent. Let me go through it. There is also the results of the application for a certificate of zoning compliance A2 made February 22, 2012 by James Sakonchik for a proposed building at 206 Homeland Street. This application included the requisite attachments, including the required A2 site survey, depicting the following to aid in determining the conformity of a proposed building use or structure with specific provisions of the zoning regulation. The plan including existing lot dimensions, existing building dimensions, proposed dimensions of the new building, the single-family house, title block, zoning grid, location map, floodplain districts, building use. On March 19, 2012, I, as the applicant James Sakonchik, received a letter by certified mail stating that this application was denied. It is important to note that this letter was signed by James R. Wendt, AICP Assistant Director, Exhibit A-2.1. I immediately identified deficiencies in this response because the Fairfield zoning regulations are clear under 2.3 Administration and Enforcement that no application for a certificate of zoning compliance, order to comply, or other zoning enforcement document shall be issued unless signed by the zoning enforcement officer. Important deficiencies exist. First, James R. Wendt, Assistant Director, is not the zoning enforcement officer, so he did not follow the regulations for signing and communicating zoning enforcement documents as stipulated in 2.3. This distinction is important because of court cases honor what is an appealable zoning decision. Reference is made to Carol R. Holt versus Zoning Board of Appeals of the town of Stonington, and that is attached as the appendix. Mr. Wendt's March 19, 2012 letter was not an appealable decision on the question of zoning for compliance because it was not signed by the zoning enforcement officer as is clearly required by the regulation. Note the word shall in the regulation has important legal meanings. Recognizing this problem, I immediately sent by certified mail a letter dated 3/22/2012 to Mr. Wendt informing him of the above deficiency and requesting proper procedures be followed, Exhibit A 2.2. I noted on the internet on April 10, 2012 meeting of the PZC, Mr. Wendt was formally authorized to enforce the regulations and to supervise the zoning enforcement officer, Exhibit A 2.3.
Well, that's not exactly true of what we did April 10th. If you look at the minutes, in fact, it was voted and approved by this commission that it has been and continues to be the commission's understanding and interpretation that both the planning director and assistant planning director who supervise the zoning enforcement officer shall also have the power to enforce the regulations under section 2.3.1. By no means should it be construed that on April 10th we gave such power to the planning director and assistant planning director. This body merely confirmed its interpretation and understanding of our rules and regulations and the state statutes that they have had that power the entire time.
Understood,
There's a difference.
Okay, but the minutes are also attached as part of the letter here.
That's what I'm reading. I'm reading the
Yeah,
minutes.
but they're also in here, so I'm acknowledging that. Okay, but let's go to the point. And that date, he clearly had the authority to direct the zoning enforcement officer to sign the denial letter and have it delivered by certified mail as required by the regulations. However, this was never done, and this of lack of action has consequences under state statutes. Approval presumed under section 8.3G. Approval of a site plan shall be presumed unless a decision to deny or modify is rendered within the period specified in section 8.7D. Exhibit A4. Per land use law practice, affordable housing section 23-1, page 700, Judge Fuller states, if the agency fails to act within these time limits, some of the land use statutes have been interpreted to require inferred or automatic approval of the application. Where this occurs, it is immaterial whether or not the application otherwise conforms to the agency's regulations. Exhibit A 4.1. Since the time period under 870 has expired, by A3G, the effect of the failure of the zoning enforcement officer to act on the zoning compliance certificate is to allow the approval by presumption. Consequently, there is a valid zoning permit to construct a new house at 206 Homeland Street. The application was for a new house on his own lot and is now approved under those conditions.
Have you
Now,
been
this
issued-
is
have you been-
powerful evidence that shows reasonable basis why these lots are not currently merged.
Have you been
And-
issued that permit by this department, by the zoning department?
Excuse me?
Have you been issued such a permit?
Okay, I have a certificate of zoning compliance that was not acted upon within 65 days, therefore, permission is presumed. Now, this is a very technical legal document.
So you're assuming that because you're right and the staff is wrong, it's been issued?
Under state statute, you got to read the statute, that's what the statute says.
I'm familiar with the statute, but the staff obviously disagrees with your interpretation of the role of the zoning enforcement officer and the power of Mr. Wendt when he sent that letter.
Okay, but again, your regulations, you wrote the rules, and your rules under 2.3 make it very clear when, who speaks for you. Now, he had the power to instruct the zoning enforcement officer to send a letter, but your regulations say the zoning enforcement officer, that individual, shall approve or deny or modify. And that didn't happen.
He sent you a letter denying it.
No, he is not the zoning enforcement officer because, as you say in your own minutes, he directs the zoning enforcement officer. He has the power to tell the zoning enforcement officer what to do, but even your own minutes identifies him as not being the zoning enforcement officer.
Well, I disagree. I've read the minutes, and I'm not going to debate you on that, but the fact is you've not been issued a certificate of zoning compliance. You think it's been granted because of a failure to issue the certificate and the subsequent actions that occurred, but in fact you don't have a certificate of zoning compliance signed by the department.
But I don't need one because approval is presumed. So, you know, it's an
My point is
important point.
this, you haven't been issued a certificate of zoning compliance. You haven't brought a mandamus action against the town of Fairfield or any individual to compel a public official to do what you've asked them to do, to issue the compliance application, the compliance certificate.
But I have put on the record for this affordable application the pertinent facts with respect to this, which I think are going to be important facts that have to be in the record. It has significance.
On that note, it's 11 o'clock. We will resume in... The 12th. The 12th is...
No, wait,
No.
hang on.
I'm sorry, hold on one second. I'll tell you when we're going to resume, Mr. Sekanchik. Hold on a second.
We would,
Holidays, right?
we would
Planning on the 4th.
We could. It's just going to shove the schedule back. That's fine. Fine. 11th it is.
We'll be back on the 11th to continue. I'm sorry, we'll be back on the 11th to continue, Mr. Sekanchik, and you can take wherever you want to continue at that point. You know, you still have the floor. It's just still your opportunity to present, so. Okay. Same tack, new tack, it's up to you. Again, this public hearing will remain open. We'll be back on the 11th, and it will continue at that time. In the interim, given the hour, the meeting will stand adjourned. My head hurts.
I got a lot of material. When it's my turn.
What is this argument he's making here? That he has two lots that he should, screw the affordable housing. And now he can build two houses.
Right, I don't get that.
So get rid of this.
All I can do to contain myself from chiming in. Send Mr. Mandamus here somewhere along the way. He doesn't have a certificate.
What was set up originally was... I mean, I think we should ask you to explain your letter next time. Unfortunately, he got...